Hello everyone, welcome to our audiobook channel. If you enjoy this story or want to hear more exciting content, don't forget to like, subscribe to the channel, and leave a comment. Your feedback helps us improve and bring even more captivating stories. Yes, we invite you to listen to part 1 of the series. Enjoy listening. Chapter 1, Chapter 1, Chapter 1 This work involves some risks _1. Chapter 1, Chapter 1 This work involves some risks _1. Linkheng City, North Ancient Estate, Unit 7, Floor 6. A warehouse manager with an annual salary of 10 million. Fu Qian looked at the letter on the table, expressionless. Urgently hiring warehouse manager for daily management tasks. If Mr. Fu is interested in accepting this job, please sign the work badge and wear it to start working from home immediately. Note, this job involves certain risks. After reading the contents of the letter, Fu Qian shook the envelope, and sure enough, a black work badge fell out. 10 million a year, and I can do it from home. What kind of magical warehouse is this? Receiving this first thing in the morning made Fu Qian feel utterly annoyed. But then again, how great it would be if it was true. Being a warehouse manager shouldn't be too busy. Good pay, light work, close to home, it's the ideal of ideals. Money isn't easy to come by these days, and with his poor financial situation, he was about to face the destiny of eating dirt. However, Fu Qian was always good at finding joy in suffering. Thinking that he had nothing better to do, he got an itchy hand and signed his name on the work badge, then hung it around his neck with exaggerated seriousness. The next moment, everything went dark before his eyes. When his vision returned, the computer desk in front of him was nowhere to be seen, and Fu Qian found himself standing in a place resembling a warehouse. The colossal space, the dim lighting, and the absence of windows made it impossible to tell whether it was day or night. A row of tall shelves stretching to the ceiling extended neatly into the distance. The shelves were evenly spaced with variously sized silver-white boxes. This is actually an online job. Is the work badge some kind of VR device? Fu Qian felt his imagination was under attack as he tried his best to understand what was happening before his eyes. Identity verification successful. Name, Fu Qian. Age, 20. Today's work begins. Job responsibility, daily warehouse management and maintenance, ensure items are correctly contained. Note, due to the special nature of the stored items, if you see any illusions during work, including but not limited to tentacles, eyeballs, patterns, steals, etc., consider them as routine leaks, do not panic, follow the instructions to recontain the items. A series of emotionless voices sounded beside his ear. Tentacles, eyeballs, something's not right with this picture. Fu Qian looked at the boxes on the shelves. What the hell is inside them? And no matter what, the packaging seems pretty tight, how could anything leak out? Beep. It was as if his question had been heard. In the next moment, the space nearby twisted, and a giant blood-red eyeball slowly emerged. Warning. Leak incident. Item number, 3-2048, name, Blood Haze. Today's work updated, enter the containment scene of 3-2048, complete recontainment. In the upper left corner of his field of view, a string of small text popped up continuously. Is this what they call a leak? Before Fu Qian had time to comment, the blood-red eyeball slowly turned its direction and fixed its gaze on him. Almost instantly, Fu Qian felt his brain was hit by a tremendous shock, and his consciousness was rapidly pulled away. Entering containment scene, Full Moon Garden. Containment achievement condition, survive for 1 hour. Each entry into the containment scene will consume 1 SAN point, current SAN points, 20. If SAN points drop to 0, you will permanently lose your sanity. I knew 10 million wouldn't be so easy to earn. 0 SAN points means irreversibly losing my mind, so does that mean if I fail 20 times, I become an idiot? That seems like a rather severe work-related injury. 1%, 5%, 50%, 98%, 100%, Full Moon Garden load complete. For a long time, you've been tormented by an increasingly severe pain. Just as you made up your mind to travel to a distant land in search of a cure, you found yourself trapped in an even more terrifying predicament. Identity, patient. Skill, none. Weapon, none. You're awake. As he regained control of his body, someone spoke nearby. Fu Qian tried to turn his head and found that he was lying in bed. At the bedside was a wizened old man, hunched over, with an inexplicably sleazy expression. "Don't worry, you'll be well soon. After all, our medical skills here are unique, he 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 he." If you hadn't added that string of laughter, it would have been more convincing. Fu Qian squinted his eyes and didn't speak. "And what do you mean, ill?" "I'm perfectly fine and bouncy, ouch. Ouch. Ouch." The moment the thought arose, an indescribable pain swept over him, nearly rolling him off the bed. Is this the pain mentioned before? If the way to complete the task is to endure this pain for an hour, that's just inhuman. Barely resisting the urge to curl up into a ball, Fu Qian followed the old man's pointed direction and spotted a long infusion tube. The tube trailed down from a stand nearby, with the needle inserted in the back of his hand. "Are they actually treating my disease? But isn't your equipment a bit too simple? What the hell is all that yellow stuff on the outside of the infusion bottle? Human oil. Wait, the color inside isn't right either. The scary red couldn't possibly be blood, could it? So, let's begin." Before he could say anything else, the old man turned the valve of the infusion tube on. Fu Qian's vision instantly darkened. Containment failed, survival time, 1 minute. Evaluation, useless person, your performance fully illustrates what it means to hesitate and be defeated. Reward, none. I died just like that. There was definitely something wrong with the stuff in the drip. Returning to the warehouse, Fu Qian was in a less than pleasant mood. That evaluation was a bit insulting. In front of him at that moment, a misty fog formed a portal in the shape of an eyeball, which he tried to touch. "Would you like to spend 1 SAN point to attempt containment again? Current SAN points, 19. So I only have 19 chances left." Yes. Fu Qian was not someone who gave up easily. SAN points reduced by 1, entering containment scene. Current identity, patient. Skill, none. Weapon, none. Are you awake? The kindly voice of the old man came again, sending a shiver through Fu Qian. Awake your head. Enduring the severe pain, Fu Qian leapt up from the bed with a carp's strength and swiftly reached for the infusion tube. Crack! The carp only managed half a flip. An unimaginable force surged through him, and like a noodle, Fu Qian was slapped back onto the bed from midair. Lying in bed, Fu Qian grunted twice, feeling as if his spine had shattered into pieces. Lie down nicely. The old man's voice was unwavering, and Fu Qian's sight darkened once more. Containment failed, survival time, 1.5 minutes. Evaluation, useless person, it is well known that to hesitate is to be defeated, to act hastily is to fail outright. Reward, none. This old geezer is seriously unfair. He can barely stand straight, and yet he's so strong. Returning to the warehouse once again, Fu Qian expressed sincere admiration. SAN points reduced by 1, entering containment scene. Actually, I feel a lot better now. The third time entering, Fu Qian deeply realized he couldn't overpower the situation and decided to try reasoning instead. Oh. The old man paused his movements, scrutinizing Fu Qian carefully. Does it not hurt any more on your body? It doesn't hurt anymore. Uttering this lie, Fu Qian felt his eyelids twitch. Ha. Ha. Half a minute later, the old man shook his head, looking at Fu Qian with eyes full of care for the mentally challenged. Your expression has betrayed you. Young man, do not hide your sickness. As the hand holding the valve moved, Fu Qian's vision went dark once more. Containment failed. Chapter 2, Chapter 2, Chapter 2, Does this insurance hurt? _1. Chapter 2, Chapter 2, Does this insurance hurt? _1. No way out. Having returned to the warehouse, Fu Qian realized he might have underestimated the difficulty of this job. In just a few minutes, his SAN points had dwindled to 17, and at this rate, becoming an idiot was just a matter of time. The key issue seemed to be that neither the hard approach nor the soft approach was working. Wait a second. Considering the old man's inscrutable combat strength, taking him on directly was certainly not going to work. But the soft approach, judging by the old man's last reaction, there was at least some room for communication. As long as communication was possible, convincing him with reason wasn't out of the question. It's just that the guy's eyes were obviously keen. Even if he clenched his teeth and claimed he wasn't in pain, his expression had already betrayed him. Expression. That's when an idea suddenly struck Fu Qian, and he yanked off his work badge from his chest. In a flash of his vision, he was back in his familiar home. Without any hesitation, he grabbed his cell phone and left the house. "Sir, are you looking for someone?" Half an hour later, someone at the reception desk of a maternity center carefully eyed Fu Qian. "I heard you have a device here for experiencing the pain of childbirth." "Yes, do you want to try it?" The receptionist's eyes lit up immediately, as if she was looking at a piece of meat on the chopping board. "What a good man, whoever becomes your wife is truly fortunate. Is it guaranteed to hurt?" Fu Qian interrupted her, asking the question he cared about most. Guaranteed hurt? His question obviously shocked the receptionist, causing her smile to stiffen. "Of course, our device is the highest grade on the market right now, with top-notch simulation effects." "Then let's get started." Fu Qian blinked. "I can't wait." Soon enough, Fu Qian found himself lying on the instrument, or rather, the torture device. A few middle-aged women gathered around him, with one who looked like a director flipping through his paperwork. "Mr. Fu, our device's pain levels go from 1 to 10. We'll start from the lowest and increase gradually. If it's too much for you, just say stop. If you're ready, we'll start from level 1. No need, just crank it up to level 10. Fu Qian yawned. It was a joke, given that once inside, there would be no time for acclimatization. What mattered was the ability to adapt to sudden, intense shocks. "Are you sure? What do you think?" So arrogant. The women exchanged glances, their eyes filled with murderous intent, and the one speaking even gritted her teeth. "Turn it on for him." "Is this it?" It seemed hardly different from being kicked in the groin. As the device was activated, an intense pain surged through him. Fu Qian focused intently on the electric current's painful stimuli, doing his utmost to keep his expression natural. A few minutes later, the women staring at him wore big question marks on their faces, and couldn't help but check the device. "Weird, is it broken?" "Sir, are you in pain?" the lead director asked cautiously. "Of course it hurts, can't you tell?" "Can't really tell. Your face looks like someone enjoying a warm bath, how could anyone tell?" The director frowned. It still didn't feel enough. Fu Qian also frowned secretly. In terms of pain levels, it still fell short of the ordeal in the containment scenario. "Is 10 the maximum level?" Hearing Fu Qian's question unexpectedly, the director was a bit stunned. The device itself does have up to level 12, but... "Let's go with level 12. Fu Qian didn't give her a chance to object. Way too arrogant. The director gritted his teeth and gave a signal with his eyes to someone beside him. "Crank it up to level 12. "But... It's okay, the equipment might be broken, this is a good chance to test it." The director's face was expressionless. Ha. This is somewhat interesting." Moments later, Fu Qian took a couple of deep breaths, using all the strength in his body to maintain a Mona Lisa smile. "Mr. Fu, are you all right?" This weird expression sent shivers down the spine of several women. "I'm fine, feeling absolutely fantastic." After much effort to turn Mona Lisa's killer smile into the Mona Lisa's smile, Fu Qian left the maternity clubhouse satisfied. A few minutes after his departure, the clubhouse erupted with screams like that of a slaughtering pig. Wearing a solemn expression, Fu Qian went back into the warehouse with his work badge once again. "Would you like to spend 1 SAN point to attempt containment again?" "Yes." "You're awake." Accompanied by the familiar voice, agony flooded in like a tidal wave once more. Fu Qian controlled every muscle in his body, filling himself with benevolence, calmness, and purity. "Yes, I'm feeling much better today, I think I don't need any treatment anymore." "Is that so?" The old man scrutinized Fu Qian carefully for a long while before finally murmuring, "That's good." As he lifted his hand, a long syringe was withdrawn from the back of Fu Qian's hand. "The moon is exceptionally warm tonight, go out and take a look." Perseverance pays off. It was finally worth the agony of the knots in his intestines. Fu Qian sighed inwardly, yet his face remained expressionless. Cautiously controlling his body to rise from the bed, Fu Qian coldly greeted the old man and headed in the direction he pointed. Only now did he see the full view of the room. The wooden room, at a glance, resembled some abandoned hospital clinic. Strictly speaking, the space wasn't too small, but the problem was that most of it was crammed with clutter, with all sorts of messy things lying around. Walking on it even produced creaking sounds. This ramshackle place looked as if a kick to the wall might allow one to gaze at the moon from inside the room. Despite his complaints, Fu Qian quickly reached the door and found that it was not only in poor condition but also nearly half blocked by clutter. Hurry up, the moon is about to set. Just as he thought to take a closer look outside, the old man's voice eerily came from behind. Is he threatening me? The four had already been removed. If I don't go outside, are you going to chop me up? Fu Qian sniffed, and the next moment, out of the corner of his eye, he caught sight of the old man standing up. A scythe, absurdly large in the man's hands, was shining with a cold light that hurt the eyes. Getting goosebumps, Fu Qian stepped out without any hesitation. Beautiful, beautiful. A cobalt canvas of stars unfurled overhead, deep and boundless, centered around a large, peerless bright moon. The old man hadn't lied to him. Fu Qian had never seen such an exaggeratedly full moon. It felt as if it filled half the sky. Someone with a fear of large objects would probably have collapsed to the ground from this overwhelming sensation. Most importantly, as the snow-white moonlight shone upon him, Fu Qian felt the pain in his body rapidly dissipating. So this was the way to relieve pain. Praise the moon. Fu Qian took 2 steps forward, unable to resist the urge to strike a pose. Shush. A sharp gust of wind assaulted him, accompanied by a spray of blood. Fu Qian felt a pain in his back as the scenery before him quickly faded away. In his final moments, Fu Qian exerted all his strength to turn his head, eager to see who had so dishonorably ambushed him. There was nothing. Containment failed, survival time, 5 minutes. Evaluation, a glimpse into the dreamlike experience. Agony can refine one's sensibility. The moon has left you enchanted. Reward, Inspiration +1. Inspiration increases your perceptual ability towards intangible things. Current SAN points, 16. Chapter 3, Chapter 3, Chapter 3 The Useless Person _1. Chapter 3, Chapter 3 The Useless Person _1. Great. At this rate, I'll soon become a mental patient with 0 SAN points. SAN points -1, enter containment scenario. Fu Qian didn't hesitate to choose to restart. The consecutive failures successfully sparked his interest. Are you awake? The old man's familiar voice came through. Once again gritting his teeth to persuade with reason, Fu Qian climbed out of bed and came to the door, squinting as he looked outside. There was something new in the courtyard, a human torso and limbs, an exaggeratedly long neck, and a head full of hair. At this moment, this odd creature, with 2 hollow eye sockets, gazed up at the starry sky, motionless. With such a demonic stance, could this be the legendary werewolf transformed under the full moon? The problem was that apart from its head, its body was completely bare. One could even vaguely make out human facial features. It seemed more like a bearded zombie. What was most eye-catching were the strips of tattered cloth on its body. Had this thing been a human before, and discovered the beauty of wildness to return to nature here? Fu Qian made an irresponsible guess. Considering its position, I must have walked right onto its face. No wonder I was sent flying with a slap. This monstrously large claw, probably bigger than my own head, must have been the weapon that finished me off. As for why it was invisible before, but now visible, Fu Qian felt he had guessed the reason. The issue was likely with that inspiration +1. It allowed me to see more things. The moon is about to set. The old man's urging voice came from behind again. This time, Fu Qian didn't turn back. He crept low, sticking to the blind spot in the werewolf's field of vision, and quietly walked out. The werewolf stayed in its place, continuing to gaze at the starry sky, showing no reaction to Fu Qian's actions. Quietly heaving a sigh of relief, Fu Qian carefully surveyed the surroundings and quickly found an exit, a stone double door. But the problem was that the door looked extremely heavy and was only a few meters away from the werewolf. Could this get any more annoying? You might as well just let it ride on top. Complaints aside, Fuqian didn't allow anger to cloud his judgment. Instead, he seriously analyzed his current predicament. Regardless of the difficulty, one must analyze the situation calmly, confront it steadily, and ultimately, elegantly sever the boss's head. That is the romance of a man. And currently, it seemed I had two choices. 1. Play hide and seek here with the werewolf, betting that its eyes and nose and whatnot were all ineffectual, remain still if the enemy doesn't move, and just wait out the time until the end. After all, the condition to achieve containment was to survive 1 hour. 2. Face the risk of being clawed through the heart and open that door that seemed to weigh a ton, then run to the back where untold dangers might lurk. Fuqian decisively decided to try the first option first. As everyone knows, if you want to survive long in the movies, the first rule is, if it's not necessary, do not be rash. Fuqian noted the prompt in the upper left corner of his vision, indicating he had already successfully survived for 15 minutes this time. Being extremely cautious not to make a sound, Fuqian slowly moved and finally, with his back to the werewolf, hid himself behind a tree. 16, 17, 20. At the 20th minute, the werewolf, which was gazing at the starry sky, suddenly howled and started to move. After abandoning its strange posture, the werewolf seemed exceedingly agitated. Moving with an incredible speed, it began to leap around the courtyard, almost instantly discovering Fuqian behind the tree. Damn it! With no way to avoid it, Fuqian was once again sent flying with a swipe. Containment failed, survival time 20 minutes. Assessment: a useless person. The most foolish thing is to expect a madman to follow the rules. Reward: none. Current SAN points: 15. So hiding doesn't work, huh? Fuqian exhaled deeply, keenly aware of the malice in this place. No wonder they set a task to survive for an hour. It seems that the werewolf standardly starts freaking out after 20 minutes, so my plan to hunker down in the yard until the end is unworkable. If I retreat, there's still the god of death old man in the house. The only solution now, it seemed, was to open the stone door and run out. But not to mention how to avoid being detected first. Was this even something a human could push? Fuqian, once again entering the containment scene, looked at the heavy stone door with a face full of grief and anger. Either way, he had to try. Fuqian quietly picked up a stone from the ground and threw it toward the distance. The stone hadn't even hit the ground when a black flash darted by. The werewolf, which had been gazing up at the starry sky, sprang up at the sound of the wind. In an instant, it crossed several meters and swatted the stone away with a swipe of its paw. Before Fuqian could swear, the werewolf in midair didn't hesitate to push off with its hind legs, change direction, and leap across half the field to crash into Fuqian's arms. Fuqian's plan to create a diversion instantly fell through. Containment failed, survival time, 10 minutes. Rating: useless person. Current SAN points: 14. What the hell is this precious thing? Again. SAN points decreased by 1, entering containment scene. To convince with reason, getting up, going out, hiding. Looking at the werewolf posing in the yard. Fuqian began to seriously contemplate the issue of resigning. At this rate, there was absolutely no way out for humans. Surviving an hour was an impossible task. If he failed again, his SAN points would be down to 13. He was getting closer to idiocy. It was clear that the werewolf had exceptionally keen hearing and would be alerted by any slight rustling. But if he didn't open the door, once the time was up and it stood up, he'd certainly be heading down a dead end. He glanced back at the cabin. The old man was eyeing him warily, scythe in hand gleaming brightly. An idea struck Fuqian. What had he said to him earlier? To come out and look at the moon. But he had been looking at the moon for so long, and it seemed there was no change. Could it be that he was gazing at it the wrong way? Fuqian had always been known for his exceptional divergent thinking since childhood, even earning the reputation of having a broad mind like that of a mental patient. Observing the werewolf in the yard, he had an idea. Finding a spot, Fuqian stretched out his hand, lifted his head, and mimicked the werewolf's actions, gazing intensely at the moon. No response. Fuqian was not one to give up easily. 1 minute, 2 minutes. Just as the werewolf began to shake its body, getting ready to walk around again, a change finally took place. The heavy-looking stone door silently opened from the outside. Who would have thought it could work like that? Although his guess had been confirmed, Fuqian couldn't feel happy. This place was quite eerie. Who knew how many more things were waiting for him ahead? But with the way now open, Fuqian quickly dropped his pose. Controlling himself to make no sound at all, he moved step by step to the position of the gate, avoiding the werewolf's line of sight. Here goes nothing. Darting out the door, his view suddenly brightened. Fuqian finally understood why this place was called Full Moon Garden. Across the undulating landscape, countless small flowers with white petals and yellow buds swayed in the wind. Each petal, like a little mirror, reflected the bright moonlight, resembling a flowing stream of mercury. Luckily, at least for the moment, he hadn't discovered anything else. Fuqian breathed a sigh of relief. The very next moment, he pulled that breath right back in. Chapter 4, Chapter 4, Chapter 4 Seeking Advice _1. Chapter 4. Chapter 4 Seeking Advice _1. Fuqian had just caught his breath when he immediately realized something was wrong. It's so hot. His body felt like a candle in an oven, as if it could melt at any moment. No, it was already melting. In just a moment, every cell in his body had become restless, struggling to break free from its constraints. His muscles began uncontrollably wriggling, almost as if his body was about to fall apart. Fuqian looked up at the flowers in front of him. The petals formed a silver river that seemed to have countless moons flowing in it. Countless bright flares reflected onto his body. Is there something wrong with the moonlight? Previously unnoticeable, but now these petals concentrated the moonlight, amplified who knows how many times, onto him, and the effect was evident. Fuqian made a swift judgment. At this moment, things began to emerge on his arm. Those were a few twitching flesh buds, rapidly twisting and expanding. Is this the beginning of a mutation? Fuqian was not intimidated by the scene before him, but grabbed one and yanked with all his might. Agony shot through him as the flesh bud was torn off. But quickly, more flesh buds appeared, and before long, his entire arm had transformed completely. It's hopeless. Fuqian decisively gave up on clearing them and instead focused his mind on the ever-growing tentacles, finding he could even slightly control their wriggling. These things were rapidly burning through his life force. It wouldn't be long before he turned into a twisted mass of decayed flesh. He couldn't stay here. Fuqian quickly scanned the area, but regrettably found no exit. He turned and ran back. However, even with such a quick response, before he could retreat into the stone door, both legs had completely melted and deformed, even starting to fuse with the ground. Making it back to the courtyard with difficulty, he could no longer maintain his balance and collapsed to the ground. This undoubtedly startled the werewolf inside the door. With a howl, a dark shadow unhesitatingly pounced on him. Containment failed, survival time 25 minutes. He had thought that after transforming into a slime-like state, the werewolf might not be interested in him, but it seemed the creature was not picky at all. In the warehouse, Fuqian remembered the scene of the werewolf feasting on him, the crisp sounds of chewing echoing in his ears. The situation is dire. The flowers in the garden are clearly abnormal, and given the speed of the mutation, there is simply no time to destroy them. Unable to destroy them, and with staying in Full Moon Garden out of the question, even if he slowed down every step of the way to the extreme, it would be impossible to last an hour. It's a dead end everywhere. What's the saying? All dead ends stem from insufficient strength. If I could knock down the old man with one kick and kill the werewolf with 2 punches, then I would surely find salvation in every desperate situation. Fuqian was still not discouraged, rather, he patted his head to free up his thoughts. Setting aside whether it was possible or not, if he really had to pick one to fight off, who would it be? The old man seemed inscrutable in cunning and strength, while the werewolf seemed a bit easier, at least appearing to have average intelligence. So here comes the question. For a creature a size larger than his own, with overwhelming strength and speed, and exceptionally fast reflexes, what martial art could kill it? Fuqian silently took off his work badge and returned to his home from the warehouse. He turned on the computer quickly. After thinking for a moment, Fuqian made a search. How to fight a grown tiger with bare hands. He went through the search results one by one. Physical capabilities vary from person to person. I once, in extreme anger. Fighting a tiger by oneself, that's easy. First, you have to be very strong. Don't panic. Don't turn your back to it. Stare into the tiger's eyes, and as it pounces, go for a sliding tackle. After a few tackles, you will have overwhelmed the tiger. Facing a screen full of chaotic advice, one entry caught his eye and gave him a glimmer of hope. Slide tackle. This idea, quite interesting. SAN points decrease by 1, entering containment scenario. Fuqian entered the full moon garden for the 8th time. Still consisted of convincing through reason, getting up, exiting the house, and hiding. Fuqian still opened the garden door. But this time, he didn't step through the door, instead, he only stuck out both hands. The specks of light reflected by the petals instantly illuminated both hands, making them distinctly visible. Soon, tendrils of flesh bulged out. Excellent. Fuqian retracted his arms and turned his head. Standing under the moonlight, the werewolf brother had already gotten up, staring straight this way, without making a sound. This damn oppressive feeling. Defeating this guy is the only possibility to complete the mission. Fuqian looked at it coldly, not blinking. Not hesitating for long, the werewolf let out a piercing howl under the moonlight and leaped high, pouncing over like a black bolt of lightning. Don't turn your back on it. Keep your eyes on its eyes. Fuqian took a deep breath and instead of retreating, he advanced. He ran a couple of steps towards the werewolf and then laid down directly, sliding underneath the werewolf's belly. Secret move, Tieba secret technique, slide tackle. Fuqian pushed one grotesquely swollen arm, barely recognizable in shape, forcibly into the werewolf's mouth, past its white and sharply pointed teeth. Agony struck, and the werewolf almost immediately closed its sharp teeth, biting down so hard that Fuqian felt his arm was nearly severed in two. That's right. Fuqian wrapped his other arm tightly around the werewolf's neck, preventing himself from falling off. And in the werewolf's mouth, every single tendril on his arm madly grew according to his will. The tendrils extended through the werewolf's mouth and esophagus, Fuqian controlling them to tear at everything they encountered, deeply entangling with the creature's organs. You trying to fuck with me? The next moment, Fuqian used all his strength, grabbing everything he could and frantically pulling outwards. A horrifically brutal howl emerged from the werewolf's mouth. Under such excruciating pain, the werewolf turned completely wild, savagely destroying everything around it. However, Fuqian, with his deformed arm, clung tightly to its chest and neck, right in the blind spot of its claw attacks. Eventually, when the entire courtyard was nearly ravaged into ruins, the werewolf finally collapsed. Struggling out from under the werewolf's body, Fuqian silently tore off the remaining bit of flesh on his left hand. A slide tackle, and then choke it to death. The brother from Tieba sure had a good idea. After pondering, Fuqian sat down on the ground with a thud, taking deep breaths. The feeling of cells rebelling was creeping up his arm bit by bit. Thankfully, it wasn't fast, and he should last for an hour. Unless that individual made a move. Fuqian looked up and noticed that the old man from inside the house had somehow made his way into the courtyard. The old man had put away his scythe and was looking at him with a peculiar expression. After a long while, the man nodded his head. Not bad at all. Your way of fighting is quite impressive. Facing such a monster, what made you think of confronting and even killing it? It's good if he's just here to talk nonsense. As time slowly approached the 1-hour mark, Fuqian finally breathed a sigh of relief. You really don't get it, do you? To a true gamer, as long as it has a health bar, even if it's a god, I'll kill it for you to see. Chapter 5, Chapter 5, Chapter 5, The Rewards of Not Being Human _1. Chapter 5, Chapter 5, The Rewards of Not Being Human _1. Survival duration of 1 hour achieved, containment of subject number 3 to 2048 successful. Assessment, mad to the marrow. In a nightmare fraught with danger, your savage and bloody performance suited the scenario all too well, earning you the right to survive. Congratulations on achieving the accomplishment. I'm no longer human, after all. From your behavior, your attachment to humanity doesn't seem strong. Werewolf killed. Reward, SAN points +20, inspiration +5, skill, air bullet. Special achievement reward, visceral critical strike. Would you like to replay the event recap? When Fuqian returned to the warehouse, a series of messages was rapidly scrolling on the screen. What do they mean my attachment to being human isn't strong? Fu Qian felt indignant about that assessment. He looked around and noticed that the mist gate he came through had disappeared. Finally, it's done. Only then did Fu Qian let out a sigh of relief. Can't deny it, though, this job is really intense. But the rewards aren't too shabby. After several trials and errors, his SAN points had fallen to the teens, but with this boost of 20 points, he had compensated for the loss. Otherwise, with the rate he had been going, he probably would have gone mad in a few days. The assessment was another story. It was a bit nuanced, hard to say if it was meant as praise or criticism. There's also an event recap playback. Fu Qian didn't hesitate to choose the replay. Reliving the process, Fu Qian noticed even more details. When he saw himself under the moonlight, he understood why he was given the mad to the marrow assessment, as he watched himself extract the werewolf's internal organs and other messy bits with his transformed arms. Of course, understanding does not mean agreement. In fact, Fu Qian didn't think there was anything wrong with his actions at all. He believed that confronting a formidable enemy head-on, fearless and undeterred, using every method possible to smash the opponent beneath his feet, was a sort of manly romance. That was the beauty of blood, nothing to do with going mad. Additionally, he noticed that it was at this moment the old man in the house had put away his scythe, sizing him up as he left the room. Completely unconcerned about being affected by the fight, he certainly hadn't chosen the wrong opponent. This old man was likely much stronger than the werewolf. After watching the recap, Fu Qian started to tally up his gains. Air bullet, compress air to form an invisible bullet, not very powerful but excels in stealth. This is pretty cool. Fu Qian's eyes lit up as he rubbed his fingers together to test it out. An invisible bullet whizzed out instantly, shooting straight into the depths of the warehouse. Its range was decent, and it was activated quite swiftly. Even if it wasn't very powerful, its convenience was a plus. With just this one gain alone, most of Fu Qian's resentment had dissipated. Having this skill on hand for future missions would definitely be a great asset. If he remembered correctly, there was also a special reward. Fu Qian quickly found the other item. Visceral Critical Strike, seize the opportunity to penetrate the wound and directly damage the opponent's viscera, inflicting devastating damage. A cruel finishing move that elegantly relieves your prey of their burdens. This. Flashes of himself extracting the werewolf's entrails with his mutated tentacles crossed Fu Qian's mind. _AMT. How could this reward not be related to his own actions? Could there be some sort of misunderstanding? He really wasn't that fond of scooping out innards. Never mind, having an extra skill is never a bad thing. Today's work is complete, thank you for your efforts. You may now leave the warehouse, see you tomorrow. The prompt sounded just in time. No need to wait to clock out, that's a plus. Fu Qian took off his work ID from around his neck. His vision went dark, and he found himself back in his long-missed home. Commuting sure is convenient. After musing for a moment, something occurred to Fu Qian. He picked up the phone on the desk and looked at it. Your account ending in 1269 has completed a transfer transaction of 30,000 yuan, with a remaining balance of 35,240. When Fu Qian found this message, he was still a bit startled. An annual salary of tens of millions, and it's settled daily. True industry conscience indeed. All the fatigue seemed to vanish in an instant. Right, it seemed he had forgotten something. Fu Qian slapped his forehead and quickly logged into the forum, finding that comment about sliding tackle killing a tiger. He first clicked like, then quietly replied below, tested, it works. That night, Fu Qian lay in bed reflecting on his new job. It must be said, today's experiences really challenged his imagination, overturning much of his prior knowledge. But even with many inexplicably strange things, Fu Qian still found enjoyment in it. Challenges, thinking, fighting, these seemed to him much more interesting than a 996 work schedule. Fu Qian was beginning to psychologically accept this job. After resting for a night, Fu Qian had a quick breakfast the next morning and put on his work ID again. Identity verification successful, workday starts. The moment the warehouse appeared before him, Fu Qian noticed something was amiss. The entire warehouse was flickering with black patterns, and clusters of ethereal bone spurs were floating midair, looking grotesque and eerie. I knew it. Fu Qian wasn't surprised in the slightest. It was becoming all too normal for something to happen in this warehouse each day. No need to ask, there had certainly been another leak. Warning, containment breach. Code, 2-133, name, ritual notes. Today's work content has been updated. Enter 2-133's containment scene, complete recontainment. You may choose the skills you wish to carry. Finally, not going in empty-handed. Fu Qian decisively picked Air Bullet and Visceral Critical Strike from the list of skills, and selected Confirm. Entering 2-133 containment scene, Ancient City. Containment achievement condition, prevent the descent of the evil god's offspring. Current SAN points, 32, entering a containment scene will consume 1 SAN point. Is this about slaying gods? These missions are really getting more thrilling one after the other. Intuition told Fu Qian that today's work would be particularly tough. 1%, 5%, 50%, 98%, 100%, the ancient city has finished loading. An indescribable evil aura shrouds this once thriving place. Righteous night watchmen are doing their utmost to eradicate the omnipresent corruption. Sadly, they have yet to realize what they are about to face. Skills, Air Bullet, Visceral Critical Strike. Weapon, none. Night Watchman. Fu Qian was hearing this unfamiliar title for the first time, but even though he was unsure what exactly this group was, since they were described as righteous, he felt they might still be of some use. At this moment, Fu Qian's vision slowly came back, and then he saw a pair of eyes. The eyes were so close that they filled Fu Qian's entire field of vision. Amber pupils were motionless, staring straight at him. Fu Qian tried to move and found it hard to breathe. Something was choking his neck. "Can you hear me?" The next moment, an ethereal, melodious voice sounded. Fu Qian frowned, quickly recalling experience from before: use verbal communication more, physical gestures less. So even though he was nearly gasping for air, he still struggled to make a sound. "C-A-N." The next moment, a bright flash of knife light passed by, and Fu Qian felt an icy chill in his chest, as blood gushed out. "I'm sorry." The voice resounded once more, this time with a hint of sobbing. "My sins have grown even deeper." Within the long sigh, Fu Qian's vision darkened. Chapter 6, Chapter 6, Chapter 6 Test_1. Chapter 6, Chapter 6 Test_1. WTF. Having returned to the warehouse, Fu Qian was unusually taken aback for a moment. This is totally illogical. You ask questions, I respond, shouldn't we then exchange a few words back and forth? A simple apology and then you just send me off. Entering containment scene 2-133, Old City. Can you hear me speaking? Re-entering, this time Fu Qian chose not to respond and instead leaned back first. This time he finally got a clear look at the person who had sent him away, a woman wearing a black, narrow hat, carrying a slender curved sword in her hand. The lower half of her face was hidden by a high collar, and her full appearance couldn't be seen. From the part that was exposed, she should be a beauty, her skin white as snow, fine as porcelain. No, that was porcelain. The woman's face was distinctly different on both sides. The left half of her face had no skin but was made of a white substance similar to bone china. Fu Qian looked down at the hand that was grasping his collar, and it wasn't the shape of a normal human hand at all, but more like a doll's prosthetic limb. Night Watchman. That was the first thing that came to Fu Qian's mind. Not to mention anything else, just her appearance alone made it clear she was no ordinary person. But why would she want to kill him without a word? Remembering what had happened before, Fu Qian didn't rush to make a move. From that one move that had sent him away, Fu Qian had already sensed that the strength of this porcelain woman was even greater than the werewolf he had encountered earlier, at least a level higher. Although he had obtained 2 skills, his physical strength was still that of an average person. There was a difference between him and the weaponized human figure in front of him, who was armed to the teeth. It's not like he could slide tackle her as he did the werewolf, right? As long as this woman had normal intelligence, she probably wouldn't give him the chance to execute a slide tackle headshot. Seeing that Fu Qian was observing her, sadness appeared on the porcelain woman's face. She sighed, let go of Fu Qian's collar, and bowed lightly to him. I'm very sorry, there's no time left. I must clear all the contaminated ones within this area. So. I'm sorry. She was about to take action again. The porcelain woman bowed, and Fu Qian's eyelids twitched, knowing things were about to get bad. As expected, in the next moment, the bright gleam of the blade filled his view again, dazzling his eyes and causing them pain. Blood splattered. Realizing he absolutely couldn't dodge, Fu Qian resolutely controlled his body's instinct to evade and took the hit head-on. Allowing the shockingly deep wound to spurt blood wildly, Fu Qian showed no fear, instead offering a grim smile. Fu Qian. The porcelain woman looked puzzled. My name is Fu Qian, what about you? I think I should know whose hand I am dying by. Fu Qian looked calmly at his murderer. She wanted to know his name. The porcelain woman was taken aback again. Su Gao. Great. Fu Qian nodded and could no longer hold on. Containment failed. Evaluation, useless person. Reward, none. Current SAN points, 30. Back in the warehouse, Fu Qian had basically made some judgments about the current situation. First of all, this woman named Su Gao was most likely a member of the Night Watchman. And according to the initial prompts, they were on a mission, which was to purge the pollution in this area. Her words and the fact that she chopped him down without saying anything were because they must have considered the situation out of control. They even had to start indiscriminate cleaning of people like him who were found in the contaminated area. SAN points reduced by 1, entering containment scene. Having cleared his thoughts, Fu Qian chose to enter again. Can you hear what I'm saying? Su Gao. Fu Qian didn't wait to see clearly this time and directly called out the name of the porcelain woman. Don't waste time, we need to clean up all potential contaminants as soon as possible. The porcelain woman's hand, which was on the knife, froze there. One could almost imagine her confusion as Fu Qian glanced at her. There's no time to explain, I need you to cooperate with my actions from now on. How do you know my name? After hesitating for a long time, Su Gao finally put down the knife and voiced the question in her heart. What's the situation like outside now? Fu Qian, as if he hadn't heard her, casually asked in return. Answering a question with another question, Fu Qian, who had mingled on the internet for many years, was very skilled at this maneuver. It was then that he realized the woman named Su Gao was almost as tall as he was. Not too good. Indeed, the porcelain woman's attention was diverted, her tone immediately turning somber. You'll know if you go outside and see for yourself. Good. Fu Qian took 2 steps forward, standing shoulder to shoulder with her. Clang. The next moment, he silently fired an air bullet. At such a close distance, it was nearly impossible for the porcelain woman to avoid it. One side of her face was hit squarely, emitting a sound like shattering glass. You. Su Gao's voice was a mixture of shock and anger. The power of the air bullet was a bit stronger than expected, though it might also be related to her special form. Struck by the air bullet, one half of the porcelain woman's head was like tempered glass that had shattered, instantly covered in dense cracks, yet no blood came out. This woman really is abnormal. The next moment, the bright glint of a blade reappeared, and Fu Qian was drenched in his own blood on the spot. So you've truly gone completely mad at your core, haven't you? The porcelain woman's sigh lingered for a long time. Containment failed. Evaluation, cold-blooded animal. Stealth attacks are a valuable trait, the ultimate form of respect toward an enemy. Reward, none. Special evaluation reward, cat school. Current SAN points, 29. Excellent. Back at the warehouse, Fu Qian showed no signs of dejection, silently analyzing his gains. First, his judgment was correct, this woman was not normal. For reasons unknown, parts of her body had transformed into that porcelain quality, even to the extent of not bleeding when injured. What price is she paying for the power she wields? Or had she originally been an enchanted doll? Combining this with his current objective, to prevent the descent of the offspring of the evil god. This world really is full of oddities. The good news is, as a night watchman, this woman should be considered part of the forces of order and righteousness. Her strength is formidable, she's a reliable enforcer. And the fact that he could indeed injure beings of their level with strikes like the one he just dealt is also good news. Overall, the outcome of this encounter was worth it. As for what would happen if the porcelain woman was actually killed? Those who kill will be killed in turn, this woman had attempted to clean up Fu Qian more than once now, so he felt no psychological burden at the prospect of ending her. Right, it seemed there was also a skill reward. Recalling something, Fu Qian quickly reviewed his special rewards. Cat School, your steps are as light and unnoticeable as a cat's, your hands are more dexterous, your movements more agile, making it much easier for you to launch stealth attacks anytime, anywhere. Simply put, it's an enhancement to agility. Upon attempting immediate activation, Fu Qian felt a lightness come over him, as if his control over his body had improved significantly. This cut was truly not endured in vain. Chapter 7 Bluffing _1 Chapter 7 Bluffing _1 SAN points decreased by 1, entering containment scenario. Fu Qian reached out and touched the mist gate, which had appeared in the warehouse once again. This time, Fu Qian didn't play any tricks, and honestly followed the porcelain white Sugao outside. As they walked out of the building, Fu Qian realized what Sugao's unease actually meant. It seemed like it should have been a bustling street, but unfortunately, there was not a soul in sight. The most striking thing was above them. The originally blue sky was now completely covered by a turtle shell-like mysterious pattern, as if a giant umbrella had been put up. Has the true evil god descended? In light of this situation, it was understandable why Sugao and the others were so tense. As for why there was not a single person on the street, Fu Qian thought he had already guessed the answer. Have all the people been evacuated? Fu Qian turned and asked. Only the part that could be evacuated. Sugao replied in a low tone. We received orders to investigate, but unfortunately, we arrived too late. In this area close to the source of pollution, the mutations have begun, and the cursed citizens are starting to transform into a deformed state. Considering the risk, my teammates and I are in the process of cleaning up. Your decision is not wrong, I would do the same. Fu Qian didn't blame them, but expressed his agreement. The situation was quite clear now. Miss Sugao and her teammates received orders to investigate and found a severe pollution curse here. After evacuating the outer crowd, they had no choice but to clean up the citizens who could not be saved. This could also explain his previous encounter when he was attacked without so much as a word. No wonder this woman had the expression of being toyed with, she had clearly become emotionally overwhelmed. They now defined the incident as a severe pollution curse, but probably still didn't know about the godson of the evil god. This was what was meant by, they still don't know what they are dealing with, at the beginning of the introduction. The good news was that, from what he could see, this beautiful woman and her teammates had roughly the same goal as him. But earning their trust was not going to be easy. Actually, I am the same. Before Sugao could say anything else, Fu Qian hummed and looked up at the sky at a 45-degree angle. I have also been contaminated. Upon hearing this, a glint of cold light flashed in Sugao's eyes. But in the end, the hand holding the knife did not move. Fu Qian seemed unaware of her action. I inadvertently discovered something unusual here and came to investigate, but the curse was unstoppable. I am now barely suppressing it from taking effect, but I won't last long. I will tell you when it's time for you to use your knife. But before that, I need to fulfill my responsibility. To get these people to listen to his arrangements, pretending to be a transcendent was very necessary. But they were all professionals, and the strength he exuded could not fool them. That's when he needed an excuse for not being in top condition. While Fu Qian was bluffing, he quickly saw several people running over from different directions. Leading them was a middle-aged man in his 40s, tall, with sharp eyes flashing on his lean, dark face. What's going on? At the sight of Fu Qian, the middle-aged man furrowed his brow and couldn't help but question Sugao. There is no room for mercy in this operation. Otherwise, it might result in the deaths of thousands or even millions of people. Captain. Sugao nodded in salute to him and pointed at Fu Qian by her side. We found him over there. He claims he came to investigate the anomalies as well. He came to investigate. The middle-aged man looked at Fu Qian with a mix of shock and suspicion. Correct. Fu Qian's expression was more natural than nature itself. Sugao has already told me, the situation is worse than we imagined, we had better hurry up. What are you? There are 4 official night watchmen here, and by the look of your power, you're just an ordinary person. What gives you the right to bark orders? However, before the captain could even speak, A buzzcutman from behind him had already rushed forward to take the lead. Fu Qian glanced at him, noting that this man appeared much younger and was incredibly burly. His hair stood up spike by spike, and in the not-so-warm weather, he wore only a short-sleeved shirt. At the moment, like everyone else, he was covered in splattered blood, and his expression was fierce and vicious. It was obvious that he was in a killing frenzy, likely to lash out at the slightest provocation. "There's no time to delay, let's discuss as we move." Nonetheless, Fu Qian ignored him, still addressing the captain. "Captain, this man's state is suspicious, and it's highly likely he has been contaminated. I believe he should be dealt with immediately." The buzzcutman, being ignored, had his eyes turn blood red, ready to eliminate Fu Qian on the spot. "Indeed, I have been cursed," Fu Qian responded, startling the few of them. "You don't feel it because I am barely holding back the curse from acting out, at the cost of having almost no combat strength. Behold." Fu Qian gently lifted his hand, and an air bullet shot out from his fingertip, striking a street lamp nearby. "I can only offer a negligible amount of help." He was actually a transcendent. The captain and others, including Su Gao, were taken aback. Regardless, such an ability was definitely not something an ordinary person could perform. The captain's gaze drifted to Su Gao, hoping she could provide more information. However, Su Gao was visibly in a bad mood, just standing like a puppet on the spot, oblivious to the captain's hopeful gaze. In the end, the captain hesitated for a moment before stopping the buzzcutman who was itching for action. "Since we all share the same goal, that's good news. May I ask your name?" "Lucky Break." Upon being asked this, Fu Qian knew things were settled. "Just call me Fu Qian," he replied, while maintaining an inscrutable expression. "Since you've been investigating here beforehand, do you know the source of the contamination?" One of the middle-aged members of the team, an old man who had been silent until now, suddenly asked. "It's not easy, still on field duty with hair that's gone all white." Fu Qian glanced at the older night watchman, who seemed more worn out than the others. "Good question." Fu Qian exhaled. "That's why I'm saying we don't have much time. We must prevent that thing from descending as soon as possible." "Descending? That thing?" The few of them were startled yet again. "Indeed," Fu Qian affirmed with sincerity. "The source of the contamination originates from an evil presence of extremely high stature. What you see now is just a minute fraction of its leaked power. I can tell you with responsibility that should that thing truly descend, the consequences are unimaginable. Like having to restart my mission all over again." Fu Qian added silently to himself. After he finished speaking, the night watchmen looked at each other in dismay. Following a moment of silence, the captain coughed. "Then I won't keep secrets either. We are the night watchman squad of this district. Not long ago, we received a report of abnormal occurrences here, along with a large-scale casualty event. Upon arrival, we realized the situation was far from simple. After urgently evacuating the crowds, we had to make some necessary arrangements. I completely understand, I would have done the same." Fu Qian interrupted him, indicating that the captain shouldn't feel any psychological burden. "I am well aware of the horror of this curse. After fulfilling my responsibilities, I'll need your help to release me from it." What a brave soul. Even the captain was somewhat moved, finding Fu Qian's figure more imposing than ever before. Chapter 8 Notes _1 Chapter 8 Notes _1 This stuff is getting thicker by the minute, we really shouldn't waste any time. Fu Qian pointed upwards with his hand. It was a welcome surprise to successfully recruit 4 enforcers so smoothly. Without further delay, his priority was to lead the team to the side of the godson for delivery. And he wasn't just talking nonsense. Just a few minutes after exiting the house, the shadows overhead had become even denser, significantly reducing visibility. Even the wind felt unpleasantly thick, as if it was laced with invisible needles that numbed the skin. The perimeter should be almost clear by now. The team leader nodded and gave firm orders. Considering Fu Qian's poor condition, he specifically instructed the porcelain-skinned Su Gao to watch over him closely. As for whether it was to protect or to monitor him, that was hard to say. Fu Qian had no objections. After all, with his mysterious origins, it was impossible to dispel their wariness with just a few words. Not To mention that at the moment, they were all in a bloodthirsty frenzy. Soon, the group made their way through the long street, heading towards the center of the shadows. The atmosphere along the way was incredibly tense, and everyone remained silent. Indeed, aside from the naturally twisted, there were few who could maintain a good mood after slaughtering their own kind, even if there were valid reasons. The area was an older residential district, with crowded buildings limiting visibility. Every member of the team proceeded with care, weapons at the ready, while Fu Qian, walking in the middle of the group, was the most relaxed of all. As they neared the central area, Fu Qian suddenly became alert. A window on the brink swung open, and a gray blur whistled out, shooting straight for his face. The blade from Su Gao and Fu Qian's air bullet hit it almost simultaneously. Pop! The thing stumbled from the impact, then was swiftly sliced in two by Su Gao. Even so, it still managed to leave a deep gash on Fu Qian's shoulder. And half its body crawled on the ground for several meters before stopping. Habituated to pain through rigorous training, Fu Qian paid little mind to the minor wound and immediately retreated to a safe distance. Only then did he get a clear look at what had attacked him. Black hair, a coat covered in grime, it must have been a person not long ago. Unfortunately, it was now completely deformed. Its body seemed as if it had been stretched tenfold before snapping back into place, with most of its legs retracted into its torso, only the lower part visible. This is the first time I've seen such a curse. The crewcutman took a deep breath, his tone relaxing ever so slightly. Fu Qian noticed that including the team leader, everyone else showed similar reactions. They had hypothesized that the curse contamination would turn people into monsters, and now that it was confirmed, the guilt in their hearts lessened a bit. "How's your wound?" The team leader turned back to look at Fu Qian. "It's nothing, let's keep going." Fu Qian acted as though he barely felt the wound on his shoulder, determined to maintain his tough image to the end. The team leader nodded silently. He had observed Fu Qian's reaction to the attack. Now he was even more convinced that Fu Qian was a transcendent who was accustomed to life and death. Only such a person could have that kind of insight and courage. Impressed, the team leader resolved to find a way to lift Fu Qian's curse after resolving the incident. "Damn it, why are there so many?" At that moment, they heard the crewcutman curse in a low growl. In just a short while, maggot people, emerging from windows, rooftops, and even the pipes overhead, crowded in toward the group of 5. "Move!" the team leader ordered decisively. The group started moving quickly, aiming to carve out a path before being surrounded completely. Fu Qian, for his part, was quite cheerful, rewarding anyone who attacked with an air bullet without exception. If he remembered correctly, the summary included a count of enemies killed, which might affect rewards or something. Collecting data was always right. It was also a good opportunity to practice and improve his proficiency. Very quickly, his air bullets reached a level where every shot was a headshot. With the cat school's bonuses, he could hit whatever he aimed at. By the time the 5 of them turned the corner of the long street, the scene before them opened up. In a spacious hall, nearly 100 figures wrapped in human clothing were stooped over on the ground. Densely packed, they covered every field. Among them were no shortage of immaculately dressed individuals. Bodies even swayed gently to some kind of rhythm. Damn! Even Fu Qian, who prided himself on being well-informed, felt nauseous at this sight. The captain's face had turned as black as charcoal. Clearly he hadn't anticipated the situation to be this grave. "All right, that's enough." But before he could speak, the always silent old man piped up. Seeing everyone looking at him, the old man harumphed before continuing. "I believe this incident has exceeded our jurisdiction. We should report it to the authorities and let them send someone." "I think you've just chickened out." The buzzcutman was the first to explode. "Report for handling. Don't tell me you don't know how long it'll take for them to get here." "That's right, I've chickened out," admitted the old man, not the least bit ashamed. "I'm different from you, I only do what's within my responsibilities. The things we've done so far, we can still somehow explain. Now, with this scenario, what do you want to do? With so many people, if we really turn this place into a living hell, are you really confident we won't be dealt with? If we all fall here, that's when the situation will truly spiral out of control. We don't even know what caused the contamination curse. It's all been said by this fellow with an unclear background. Are you really trusting his words that much?" Why is this coming back on me? Seeing the old man pointing at him, Fuqian calmly shook his head. There's no need to trust everything I've said, what I've said isn't entirely true anyway. We can't just walk away like this, we won't be able to explain ourselves if we go back, said the captain with a cold face. Who says we've found nothing? The old man pulled out something and tossed it over. At least we found this. Fuqian glanced at it, a ragged black notebook. Where did you find this? The captain looked startled. During the cleanup, the old man harumphed, pointing at Fuqian. I just didn't trust him, so I didn't show it until now. With this thing, we can't be considered to have come away empty-handed, right? Seeing the remaining 3 people fall into silence, seemingly persuaded, Fuqian felt uneasy. That's not right, this feels like disbanding the team before we've even seen the boss. Fuqian pointed at the object in the captain's hand. That, may I take a look at it? This is an important item. Before the captain could respond, the buzzcutman got angry first. However, the captain ignored him and handed over the notebook. There's no harm in letting you see it. This item is connected to another incident we've been investigating. I've looked through it before, there's nothing unusual. The notebook was thin, with not much content. Fuqian flipped through it with his fingertips, frowning. I can't understand this part below. What does it mean? What? Following where Fuqian was pointing, everyone looked incredulous. You're not joking. Why would I joke? This section here is all messed up, it's completely unreadable. The captain silently handed over a stick. Can you copy it down? Fuqian, why? Because to us, that section appears blank. Chapter 9, Chapter 9, Chapter 9, Exhausting Every Effort _1. Chapter 9, Chapter 9, Exhausting Every Effort _1. Indeed, it was so. From the reactions of the crowd a moment before, Fuqian had felt something amiss, and now he finally confirmed the reason. None of the 4 could see this part of the text, it was only visible to him. Fuqian didn't put much stock in explanations like being a chosen one. After some thought, the only explanation would have to do with the inspiration he had gained previously. Especially since he gained quite a bit of inspiration after the last successful containment. Inspiration was said to enhance one's perception of intangible things. It must be the reason he could see the special content in the notes. Fuqian didn't waste words, amidst the complex looks from the others, he quickly sketched the content he saw on the ground. For him, completing the mission against the clock was the most important thing, he couldn't afford to miss any clues. The passage wasn't long, and Fuqian finished drawing it quickly. The group stared at what he had drawn, all of them exchanging confused glances. What is this? Cuneiform script? Seems like some kind of code. No clue whatsoever. The captain was clearly just as baffled. Sugao, what do you think? Unexpectedly. This girl turned out to be the tech expert of the team. Fuqian glanced at the porcelain-skinned woman. It should be a type of special cipher. Sugao pondered for a moment before giving her judgment. I have a few ideas about the direction to take, but deciphering it won't be easy. It requires ample time, which we absolutely don't have under the current circumstances. Isn't that completely pointless then? Just a waste of time. A wave of disappointment swept through the group. Let me give it a try. Fuqian suddenly spoke up. You understand it. Everyone turned to look at Fuqian in unison. I don't, but I can learn. Fuqian said it as if it were the most natural thing in the world and turned to Sugao. Tell me your guesses first. This. Sugao wasn't completely stunned and murmured a few ideas. Learn my ass. It was then that the crewcutman couldn't hold back his anger and burst out yelling. He had found Fuqian annoying for a long time now. Never mind the unexplained origins, yet making everyone listen to him. To slow the spread of the curse, they had turned into butchers, willing to slaughter their own kind. And this guy still had the mood to fool around here. Rage-fueled power gathered in his palms, the crewcutman was now genuinely intent on killing. However, before he could step forward, a sharp sense of danger rose in his heart. Suddenly turning around, an air bullet grazed past his neck. At the same time, blood splattered as another air bullet obliterated his left eye. Everyone stood frozen on the spot. This bastard had attacked without warning, evidently with the intent to kill. They'd been deceived, this guy really was trouble. Without concerning himself with what the others were thinking, Fu Qian didn't hesitate to target the captain after attacking the crewcut men, firing 3 air bullets in rapid succession. With such a short distance between them, the captain had no chance to avoid them. The next moment, a shrill scream echoed, and a vibrant burst of electricity exploded from the captain's body, its brightness almost instantly blinding. This blast of electricity hit Fu Qian squarely. Fu Qian felt as if his body had instantly become liquid. Containment failed. So powerful. He was indeed carrying a heavy weapon on him. Back in the warehouse, Fu Qian didn't hesitate to take off his work badge from around his neck. Just because Su Gao didn't have the time didn't mean he didn't. From the moment he asked her, he was determined to restart. So, when the crewcutman wanted to act, he didn't hold back either. As for attacking the captain, it was simply common sense. In such a dangerous situation, the captain still hesitated to order a retreat. Fu Qian intuitively felt he must be relying on something. Those 3 bullets were just a handy test. Now it appeared that he hadn't been wrong in his judgment, the captain did indeed have some kind of superweapon on him that had instantly killed him with a flash of lightning. This was definitely good news, as it would surely come in handy when facing the boss later. Fu Qian would never underestimate anything worthy of being called a descendant of the evil god. When he got home, he immediately found some paper and a pen. After a long period of contemplation with his eyes closed, he began to write, drawing out the content he had just jotted down in his notebook again. Memorizing these meaningless characters by rote was incredibly difficult, especially ensuring that there were no errors or omissions. By the time he had written everything down, even Fu Qian, who ordinarily boasted of his exceptional memory, felt as though he was about to have a cerebral hemorrhage. Finally, he knew how Huang Yaoshi's wife had died. As he sighed, Fu Qian began the arduous task of decryption. Thanks to his wide range of hobbies, he was half an enthusiast in this field on a regular basis. But he wasn't a professional, and without Su Gao's hints, decoding this would have been akin to finding a needle in a haystack. Now that he had a direction, the workload had greatly diminished. Even so, by the time he made any headway, several hours had passed. Amidst the groveling multitude of followers, descending into the depths beneath the earth. A good while later, as Fu Qian looked at what he held in his hand, he put his work badge back on. Entering containment scene, current SAN points, 27. The scene we're faced with now has exceeded our understanding, he said. Let's stop here. This time, when the group came to the hall, Fu Qian didn't even give the old man a chance to pull out his notes, he cut off the argument and looked seriously at the captain. Is there some deep space around here? He asked. Deep space. The captain frowned, not understanding Fu Qian's intention. Amidst the multitude of followers, it descends into the depths beneath the earth, Fu Qian pointed forward, confident in his theory. This is part of a ritual, the 2 sentences I just recited are key steps in that ritual. An evil presence will descend into the depths of the earth, we need to find it as soon as possible. In truth, Fu Qian wasn't certain those 2 sentences meant exactly that, but in order to get the others to follow his arrangements, he had to maintain a professional image. I'm not familiar enough with this place, so I need to confirm with you if there's such a place here, he asked. This. Everyone exchanged glances. Yes, said Su Gao, who until then had been silent. She pointed downwards with her hand. Beneath this building by several dozen meters lies a high-security underground vault. Lots of people store their valuables in there. You know that too. Fu Qian silently praised her. Such places are generally not cheap, sister, you seem to be quite wealthy. Do you know how to get down there? He asked. I do. Su Gao was indeed a hero among women, she answered and instantly drew her sword with a swoosh. In the next instant, a flash of the blade split the crowd of maggot people, cleaving a path through them. Su Gao took the lead, striding forward. Of course, her fierce and peerless slash had inevitably disturbed the maggot people swarming all around. Amidst the shrill buzzing that made one's teeth ache, the maggot people began to turn in their direction, moving towards them with a firm yet slow convergence. Luckily, they were indeed slow enough. By the time the group led by Su Gao had opened a descending escalator, the entrance was already surrounded by a dense mass of twisted bodies. As the escalator door closed, Fu Qian noticed the old man quietly sighing. The steadfast brother must be hating himself right now, which was completely understandable. To be honest, he would have liked it if the group had just gone berserk and started an unstoppable rampage above, potentially racking up a considerable number of kills in the process. But doing such a thing would inevitably have taken up a lot of time and might have delayed the completion of the mission. Moreover, these 4 people clearly hadn't gone truly mad yet. The passage downwards was nearly pitch black, and after an indeterminable amount of time, they finally saw some light ahead. Suddenly, an intense smell hit them. Get ready. Without needing the captain to give orders, everyone switched to combat readiness. It seemed they had found the right place. Fu Qian followed behind Su Gao and sidestepped through a massive metal door. Inside, the scene was something of a restricted nature. Chapter 10, Chapter 10, Chapter 10, Restricted Scene _1. Chapter 10, Chapter 10, Restricted Scene _1. In the spacious hall, clothes were scattered all over the floor. Their owners had vanished. Only a group of pale, worm-like creatures remained, entangled like a knot of snakes, caressing each other. In the midst of the serpent ring, a woman, appearing to be a distinguished lady, was dressed in a deep red gown, elegantly bringing a teacup to her lips. Although the teacup was only half full, the lady still elegantly bit off a piece, chewing without showing her teeth, making a crunching sound. She seemed utterly indifferent to the bloody holes punctured in her cheeks. Oh, the evil deeds I've done in my life, to witness such a scene. Fu Qian sighed silently and turned to look at his 4 teammates. Judging by their expressions, they were also deeply shocked. Action. The team leader, true to his title, was almost the first among them to recover his composure. Glancing at the lady's swollen belly, he immediately issued the attack command. There's no way around it, her appearance practically screams boss. In this situation, no one would believe she was an innocent bystander. The 4-person squad showed excellent teamwork. At the captain's command, the crewcutman was almost the first to rush forward. The old man seemed reluctant, but he followed closely behind. The crewcutman, now wearing a pair of oddly shaped gloves, threw a punch that faintly echoed with the sound of thunder. The old man had no weapon in hand, but a casual gesture from him exploded in a burst of flames. Under their swift attack, the lady didn't even have a chance to dodge, she was instantly overwhelmed. At this moment, the seemingly strongest team leader did not charge forward but stood still, taking something out of his bosom, targeting the lady from a distance. Su Gao, the woman with the porcelain face, unsheathed her blade, guarding by his side, preventing the distressed snakes from attacking him. This was the big move, decisive and resolute. Fu Qian knew what the team leader was planning. Having moved to the side earlier, he finally got a clear view of what the team leader's ultimate weapon was. Indeed, it was something hard to describe as a weapon, about the length of a forearm with a fist-sized globe at the end, attached to a long and slender handle. The curious shape, coupled with the countless currents of electricity swirling around it at the moment, almost made it seem like something broken off from a magnetic storm coil. This was the thing that had taken him down earlier, the captain's ultimate weapon. The captain was clearly catalyzing its power for some big strike. In just a few seconds, the accumulated force had far surpassed what had hit him before, the white-hot lightning making it almost unbearable to look at. Compared to this horrifying power, what had hit him before was nothing but a spark of electricity. However, just then, there was a complication on the side of the crewcutman and the old man. A sharp cry rang out, and Fu Qian felt his head shake even from a distance, his nose almost bleeding. Accompanied by a spray of blood, the crewcutman was sent flying, crashing heavily against the wall. Before he could adjust his posture, a blood-drenched figure had already rushed towards him, impaling him to the wall with a sharp bone blade as if skewering lamb. Damn! The once gracefully poised lady still kept her grace. One leg had lost all flesh, but it didn't affect her from confidently standing there. For bone claws of different shapes pierced through the back of her gown, one of which had impaled the crewcutman. The moment this image entered his sight, Fu Qian felt his head hammered, his consciousness blurring. SAN points deducted by 5. Fu Qian was somewhat startled. Just catching a glimpse of this creature, and directly 5 SAN points were lost. That's like 5 lives. The risk of this mission is too high. After a fatal strike, the lady did not linger, she pulled out the bone blade and flashed to the side, slicing the old man, who had just gotten up, and the floor beneath him in two. The movements in the blink of an eye were so swift her figure seemed weightless. A sudden explosive rebuke came from the side, and by then, the captain had finally completed the guidance. A straight column of electricity, composed of innumerable bolts, instantly engulfed both the noblewoman and the old man's corpse on the ground. Lightning railgun. Watching the endless stream of lightning beams, Fuqian finally understood the true power of the captain's ultimate weapon. However, under this world-shattering attack, countless black threads rapidly wove into a cocoon in front of the noblewoman, blocking the lightning beams for a sliver of time. Thanks to this slight impediment, the noblewoman's ghostly figure escaped the range of the lightning bolts. With a single flash, she was directly in front of the captain. A much sharper wailing sound arose again, causing the captain's body to tremble. Blood flowed from both his nose and mouth, and he stiffened on the spot. Under the attack of the lightning railgun, one of the 4 bone blades had already vaporized and vanished. But the remaining 3 simultaneously penetrated the captain's body, lifting him into the air. The captain's ultimate weapon was powerful indeed, but it was to no avail since the opponent had maxed out her evasion. The baby's cries grew louder. Fuqian, watching the noblewoman who was no longer in human form, fired a succession of air bullets. The transformed noblewoman didn't even dodge. After a series of crisp sounds of bones clicking, her body didn't bear a single mark. Indeed, his own means of attack could almost never break through her defenses. Evil God's offspring has arrived, containment failed. At that moment, an alert sounded in his ear and the scene before his eyes quickly blurred. The last thing Fuqian saw was Sugao leaping up high and throwing a blade of light at the noblewoman. Phew! Back in the storeroom, Fuqian took a deep breath and vaguely felt his head was still aching. He hadn't expected to fail like this. Strictly speaking, there wasn't much of a problem with the squad's tactical arrangement just now. Straight to the point without any fuss, some team members distracted, providing opportunity for the strongest weapon to strike. It seemed logical enough. One could only say that the attempted distraction by the 2 crewcut men had unexpectedly alerted the evil god's offspring, and then its mother was overwhelmingly powerful. After transforming, the woman's speed was too fast, plus that strange shield, resulted in the captain's ultimate weapon completely missing its intended target. Decisiveness mistaken for rush. Would you like to spend 1 SAN point to attempt containment again? After summarizing the situation, Fuqian decisively pressed his hand to the mist gate that had appeared. Yes. He already had a new idea. Once again, he returned to the grand hall that broadened his horizons. Prepare for action. Hold on. This time, just as the captain was about to give orders, Fuqian directly stopped him. If you want the thing in your arms to be of any use, it's best not to startle her. And these 2 should stay put as well. What right do you have to give orders? The 2 crewcut men immediately became furious. How could he possibly know? The captain was taken aback when his greatest secret was so unexpectedly revealed, and he held back his subordinates with his hand. Putting aside how the other men knew, Fuqian's performance all along had convinced him that this young man would not act without aim. Seeing the captain's cooperative response, Fuqian satisfactorily nodded at him. Carefully avoiding the stripy objects and unidentified liquids on the floor, he sat down opposite the noblewoman. Hello there, beautiful. Chapter 11, Chapter 11, Chapter 11, The Vitality of the Evil God _1. Chapter 11, Chapter 11, The Vitality of the Evil God _1. Hello there, young man. Facing Fuqian's sudden flirtation, the elegant lady was clearly taken aback before letting out a tittering laugh. Her eyes had a strange haziness to them, resembling a creeping beast. Since the moment the 5 of them entered, they had been under the watch of such predator-like gaze. Accompanied by the gurgling of bloody saliva in her mouth, Fuqian had no doubt she could pounce at any moment to take a bite out of someone. Fortunately, after responding to Fuqian, her eyes became slightly clearer, as if she remembered her human identity. Still able to hold a conversation, there's a chance. Apparently, she hadn't completely lost her sanity. Fuqian judged correctly and, growing more interested, decided to continue with his plan to draw attention. Madam, you're so beautiful. Interested in some intimate contact. Worried that boring flirtatious words wouldn't catch her attention, he went straight to the point. Hee. The beautiful woman covered her mouth with her hand, her eyes slowly rolling as she let out a series of delicate laughs. Your question is quite rude, but it's lively and you look quite delectable. But are you sure you will still like it, like this? The lady leaned back slightly, exposing her swollen belly, gently caressing it with one hand, her gaze soft. No problem, I like children. Fu Qian's expression remained unchanged. Really? That's wonderful. The beautiful woman's smile grew increasingly syrupy. I like them too, especially young children. Is this guy refusing to let us take action and going off to flirt instead? With some evil entity spouting from his mouth. The four people in the distance were stunned, their sanity and dignity were being violently assailed by what they saw. In this short while, the drips of blood that had fallen on the lady's face had reddened a patch on her chest. Amidst the contrast of red and white, she appeared even more seductively demonic. However, Fu Qian remained oblivious to this, his eyes brimming with affection and his language vulgar and distasteful. This child mustn't be allowed to remain. Witnessing this scene, the crew cutman couldn't help murmuring to himself, feeling his Qilin arm getting restless. At such a young age, he was already this perverted. Given time, he'd surely become a scourge. This guy obviously came prepared, holding much information we are unaware of. By contrast, the captain was a bit more mature, understanding that Fu Qian was buying time for them, although he couldn't help but feel agitated. However agitated he was, the captain still promptly pulled out his ultimate weapon. Cover me. He whispered a shout, aiming at the target and began to gather power. With Fu Qian's distraction present, locking on the target couldn't have been easier. The lady was even led to turn her back towards them. If they couldn't handle this, might as well just bash their head in and be done with it. As streaks of lightning frantically converged and flickered, the captain became increasingly tense as well. Finally, under the protection of his three comrades, the electricity in the captain's hand swelled to its limit. The next moment, an endless surge of lightning completely enveloped the lady. Just across the table, Fu Qian felt like he was going blind from that instant flash. The lady's body, like straw in a tempest, crumbled without a doubt upon contact. From skin to bone, turned to ash and annihilated. And from where her belly was, a shadowy figure began to struggle fiercely. Barriers appeared and burst instantaneously, and finally, the shadow silently exploded into a cloud of black mist, slowly dissipating. Is she dead? The resplendent lightning railgun ceased its fury. All four night watchmen let out a sigh of relief. The captain had already reached his limit, nearly collapsing to the ground. It was evident that controlling this thing took a considerable toll on his strength. Check the surroundings. Barely standing up, the captain had only spoken half his words when a hand pierced through his chest. Everyone froze on the spot, watching in disbelief as the old man stood behind the captain with a strange smile. The next moment, the withered hand revealed bone blades that completely extinguished the captain's life force. The godson's descent, containment failure. This thing doesn't even die. Upon returning to the warehouse, Fu Qian acutely realized the difficulty of contending with an evil god. After the lady had been annihilated, he had not received the mission completion prompt, which had made him suspicious then. Unfortunately, the old man was too quick. Looking at it now, could it be that even if the host body for the descent was destroyed, the entity could still possess and take over another's body to complete its descent? Impossible. If it truly were immortal and could simply possess anyone, this entity could have just slaughtered everyone one by one. Why, then, would it have such a strong reaction to the lightning? Railgun. But the old man was indeed possessed. Was there something different about him? The ritual notebook. Fu Qian's eyes lit up, he thought of something. He remembered the old man saying he found the notebook nearby, and the ritual cipher also came from it. In a sense, it was too normal for the notebook to be connected with the brother who wanted to descend. Considering that the old man always kept it close, completing the embodiment through it was indeed possible. But if that were the case, the situation became even more complex. SAN points decreased by 1, entering containment scene. Fu Qian, with a frown, chose to enter once again. Still in his avatar of an expert, he guided everyone underground, then moved to flirt with the girls, creating an opportunity for the captain to unleash his power. Only this time, after the captain had initiated the attack, Fu Qian did not stay to watch the evil god's obliteration but retreated immediately. The moment the black shadow struggled and dissipated in the lightning, Fu Qian fired 5 air bullets at the captain's weapon without hesitation. In the eyes of the astonished crowd, the ongoing lightning reacted instantly. After a violent tremble, the lightning exploded from its source, and blue-white sparks enveloped the entire hall in an instant. Under the terrible impact, Fu Qian was inevitably thrown back. Moments later, as the lightning receded, Fu Qian climbed up from the ground and saw several people also lying there. The old man, who was closest and weakest, had been completely charred. The captain and the men with the cropped haircut were also on their last breath. The only one standing was the porcelain-like woman, Su Gao. At that moment, leaning on her knife, she looked at himself with complex eyes. Her whole body was in a state of glass-like fissures, as if she could shatter at any moment. It was a brutal sight. It's not over yet. Fu Qian, equally battered, still hadn't received the containment success prompt. Narrowing his eyes and scanning the area, Fu Qian noticed that not far from the old man's corpse, a notebook shone brilliantly, with pages flipping on their own. It fell out. Fu Qian's heart stirred, and as he watched the crimson blood light on the notebook that appeared to come alive, he grabbed it in his hand. The next moment, he felt pain in his palm. Almost instantly, a chill and shadowy presence enveloped him. Fu Qian felt his mind swiftly being filled with an insatiable lust for killing, and his rationality rapidly dissipated. As expected, this thing wanted to possess him through the notebook. The evil god surely had formidable vitality. While Fu Qian marveled, he lifted his right hand. Caressing under his ribcage, he found a wound. Chapter 12, Chapter 12, Chapter 12 Special Rewards _1. Chapter 12, Chapter 12 Special Rewards _1. What was that move called again? Fu Qian looked up at the sky at a 45-degree angle, taking a long breath. That skill he had never had the chance to use. Visceral crit. Seize the opportunity, pass through the wound and directly damage the opponent's viscera, dealing devastating damage. Without any hesitation, he extended his hand into the wound beneath the ribcage. The warm touch came through, his 5 fingers like bloodthirsty snakes, rapidly twisting and elongating. Countless tiny tentacles grew wildly, penetrating deep into the flesh and fusing tightly together. Die. For me. His right hand suddenly clenched, and the visceral critical strike was unleashed. Amidst a sky of blood-light splattering, Fu Qian felt as if his flesh and soul were being hollowed out by this strike. SAN points decreased by 1. SAN points decreased by 1. SAN points decreased by 1. A series of fine whimpers filled his brain, tearing at his consciousness. A torrent of warnings about the decrease in SAN points crazily flashed, taking away 7 points before stopping. The whimpering also disappeared. Phew. That must really be the end of it, Fu Qian exhaled. Lifting his head, in the shocked and perplexed gazes of the captain and Su Gao, Fu Qian arched his eyebrows and stood with his hands behind his back, exuding the aura of a master. Containment conditions met, number 2 to 133 successfully contained. The notification of successful containment came through, and the scene in front of him rapidly dissipated, returning Fu Qian to the warehouse. Mission complete. Evaluation, God-blocking demise. Congratulations, you not only successfully thwarted the advent of the evil god's offspring but even inflicted irreparable damage on it yourself. This is an incredible feat. You have taught divine beings a lesson with your mortal body. The title of a mad yet calm thug is rightfully yours. This incident caused severe casualties, leading to the fall of a Night Watchman member, and has drawn high attention within the Night Watchman, with relevant information being strictly classified. Enemies slain, Godson, Maggot People *22. Rewards, SAN points plus 31, Inspiration plus 5. Special kill reward, Thug. Would you like to replay the event recap? It's finally over. In the warehouse, the previous anomalies had already disappeared. As Fu Qian let out a sigh of relief, his first instinct was to reach out and feel his stomach. That visceral crit really left quite the impression. After confirming all his internal parts were still there, Fu Qian finally began to inspect his rewards. God-blocking demise. This evaluation is quite something, mainly stemming from his feat of deicide, probably. As for the kills, it clearly included the count of Maggot People. Considering the increase in SAN points, it seemed that his earlier spree of racking up kills inside did pay off. The losses in SAN points this time were quite severe, so any extra supplement was welcome. With this reward, he now had 43 SAN points. Inspiration went up by another 5, who knows what he would see next time. However, beyond these, the main reward was only a single item. Wasn't that somewhat unreasonable? Fu Qian furrowed his brow, flipping to his special kill reward. Thug, a transcendent form, a consumable. Using it will upgrade you to this form, and the process is irreversible. A robust body, swift speed, allowing you to completely break free from human limitations, altering the very essence of life. Flesh is frail, flesh ascends. This. Fu Qian was rarely stupefied for a moment. Transcendent form. The name alone made it hard not to think of the transcendence. Recalling his 4 night watchman teammates from before, Fu Qian had a deep impression of Su Gao's terrifying blade light. That speed and killing power were not something any swordsmanship master could describe, it was a power unique to transcendence. If he wasn't misunderstanding, could this item transform him to be like them? Without doing anything, just use it and become a superhuman. Are such good things really possible? But still, he needed to be cautious. After all, the process was irreversible. Fu Qian touched his chin, hesitating for perhaps 2 seconds. Warning, the item will disappear after use. Do you confirm to use it? Confirm. This kind of opportunity was impossible to give up. After all, having worked so hard for so long, wouldn't it be a waste not to use it now? As Fu Qian confirmed, a warm current surged into his body. The next moment, it seemed as if all the blood in his body was boiling. His heart, like an overclocked motor, started to beat furiously, accompanied by all his muscles rapidly contracting and expanding. After a while, Fu Qian opened his eyes, his heartbeat had returned to normal, and his body was filled with a power he had never felt before. Fu Qian tried clenching his fist and could feel the muscles on his arm twined like steel wires. He was no longer an ordinary person, and the feeling deep in his heart made Fu Qian acutely aware of this fact. What a great item, indeed a reward worthy of slaying a god. The chances of succeeding in future missions had just increased a lot. Work for the day is complete, thank you for your efforts. You may now leave the warehouse, see you tomorrow. As the reminder sounded, Fu Qian took off his work badge. I'm really quite exhausted. The work today had been tougher than imagined and had taken quite a toll on him mentally. The scenery changed, and he was back in the familiar confines of his home. Fu Qian shook his head and quickly realized he hadn't eaten all day. Hesitating over whether to cook some simple noodles or order takeaway as a treat, Fu Qian suddenly felt a bit uncomfortable. He looked down and found that his normally well-fitting clothes were now bursting at the seams, the buttons as if they were about to give way. Realizing something, Fu Qian rushed into the bathroom. The person in the mirror was both familiar and strange. His body, formerly somewhat lean, now seemed inflated like a balloon. Smooth lines, a perfect physique, every muscle sharply defined. His every move was filled with explosive power. The reward obtained from the scene could actually be brought out. What kind of job had he taken on exactly? Fu Qian washed his face, trying to calm himself down. Though his title was thug, luckily he hadn't grown a scruffy beard, and his skin even seemed finer and smoother now. Is this what's trendy now, a thug in a suit? Exiting the bathroom, Fu Qian thought of something and pointed his finger towards a water bottle on the table. Pop. Water splashed everywhere. The bottle was punctured by an invisible air bullet, spilling water all over the table. All was silent. What would you do if you suddenly weren't human anymore? Fu Qian had never really thought about this question before. If the 30,000 a day that previously kept him from being dirt poor altered his perception of money, then becoming a thug had changed his concept of life itself. This change was so significant that it took him the time it takes to eat a burger to digest this reality. Taking a big gulp of Coke, Fu Qian watched the men and women inside McDonald's, full of emotion. This was his habit, to eat junk food after every big bout of work. It was a satisfaction filled with indulgence and decadence, feeling fantastic. From childhood, Fu Qian had always been someone who didn't conform to norms, otherwise, he wouldn't have ended up in such a poor and distressed state. But no matter what, the pressure of survival was still there, and he'd had to scurry around for a living. Now that suddenly the pressure to survive was gone, and he might not even be human anymore. When you really think about it, is the feeling of losing your life's goals overnight a joyful one? Yes, it was absolutely thrilling. Fu Qian answered himself without hesitation. Although he was a freelancer, he had nothing in common with those melancholic, artistic youths. He was a pragmatic person and disliked such pretentious thinking. Given a million chances, he would give the same answer every time. Nothing was more valuable than having more choices. As he was contemplating life, his phone on the table suddenly rang. Chapter 13, Chapter 13, Chapter 13 Shocking Young Master Qin _1. Chapter 13, Chapter 13 Shocking Young Master Qin _1. Qin Mingze. Upon seeing the incoming call number, Fu Qian cheerfully answered it. Are you not at home? The person on the other end of the phone obviously sounded a bit puzzled. I'm eating downstairs. Rare sight, you actually went out to eat. Mr. Qin's words were tinged with irony. You're not standing at my door, are you? What do you think? Hurry up and roll back here. I went back home over the weekend and brought you some local products. Forget it, I'll come down to find you. I've got things to do later, I'll just leave the stuff at your doorstep. Fu Qian couldn't have asked for more and immediately agreed before hanging up the phone. As a seasoned homebody, this brother Qin Mingze was one of the few friends Fu Qian had. He was several years older than Fu Qian and could be called a young talent. He came from a well-off family, was a sportsman, a social butterfly, fluent in 5 languages, and had graduated from a prestigious university at a young age. Now he was interning at a large law firm, aspiring to become a professional litigant. Such a person, by all accounts, should have nothing to do with Fu Qian, yet they somehow became friends. In his words, without a professional keeping an eye on you, you'd definitely become a societal hazard, and seeing you gives me an inexplicable sense of mission. 5 minutes later, a tall figure pushed open the door of McDonald's and strode towards Fu Qian. Can't you eat something healthier for once when you go out? Holy shit. Qin Mingze, dressed in a suit and shoes, stopped 2 steps away from Fu Qian. He rubbed his eyes in disbelief. What the hell happened to you? Oh, I've been working out recently. Facing Qin Mingze's baffled amazement, Fu Qian had his answer ready and wore an innocent face. He knew the changes in his body were somewhat exaggerated. He was not short to begin with, but rather thin, and standing in front of Qin Mingze, he used to look like a twig. But after his transformation into a thug, although still not as big as Qin Mingze, he was a completely different person with a robust sense of strength all over his body. You work out. And you got fit so fast. How long has it been since we saw each other? Qin Mingze, now sitting down, still couldn't believe the reality before him. Each to their own skill. Fu Qian continued to bullshit. But weren't you about to go bankrupt? That's why I need to invest in myself even more. I'm planning to change tracks. Becoming a Keptman has officially been added to my career plan. Right up until he left, Qin Mingze was still shaking his head in shock, looking at Fu Qian's physique. Indeed, everyone has their own talents. I don't know how much suffering I'd have to endure to get like this. I'd rather trade it for 3 languages. You've got the natural makings of a Keptman. I'll introduce you to some wealthy women in a few days. Don't forget me when you're living the good life. Will do, I'll never forget your kindness. After a shocked young Master Qin left, Fu Qian casually returned home, only to find 2 large cardboard boxes waiting at his doorstep. Really afraid I'd starve to death, huh? Fu Qian blinked and carried the boxes into his house. Work begins today. Warning, containment breach. Name, Cocoon Room, code, 2-292. Today's work content has been updated. Enter the containment scene of 2-292, complete recontainment. Ha! The familiar style, the familiar scent. This warehouse just isn't comfortable without a breach each day. The next day, when Fu Qian entered the warehouse, he unsurprisingly encountered another breach incident. This time, the anomaly in the warehouse was even stranger. Shadows of strange cocoons roamed the air, each composed of white and black threads. The cocoons would flicker in and out of sight, occasionally twisting as if something inside wanted to come to life. Entering containment scene of 2-292. 1%, 3%, 10%, 50%, 98%, 100%, loading complete. Emerging from the cocoon is a painful process, and humanity's thirst for power is endless. However, every step in exploring transcendental powers is filled with danger. Undeveloped younglings are exceedingly fragile, and danger could come from anywhere. Condition for containment success: ensure Wenli successfully advances to the 6th phase. Hiss. The moment the containment condition appeared, Fu Qian took a sharp breath. Putting aside who Wenli was, this turned out to be a protection mission. As everyone knows, almost all games include protection, escort, and rescue missions. They are always the most troublesome. They were also Fu Qian's least favorite. Just thinking about those NPCs who like to run around courting death made Fu Qian seriously consider throwing in the towel. Choose the skills you wish to carry. The familiar skill interface appeared again. Fu Qian checked and noticed that Thug was not an option this time. It seems that it had fully integrated with him and was no longer considered an additional skill. Without any hesitation, Fu Qian took all his skills with him. Skills: Air Bullet, Visceral Critical Strike, Cat School. Weapon: none. The scene blurred before him in the next moment, signaling a change of environment. Fu Qian immediately braced for combat. He couldn't help it, his previous encounters had left a deep impression. Each time he arrived, the situation was extremely perilous. However, this time it vastly exceeded his expectations. Blue skies and clear waters, grass and shady trees. A rare and beautiful scenery unfolded before his eyes. Underfoot lay a massive circular plaza, constructed entirely of stones similar to white marble. Looking ahead, a row of grand and imposing white villas came into view, lavishly decorated without being ostentatious, exuding an air of exceptional dignity. In front of the villas, several servants in uniform busied themselves. This doesn't seem right. Fu Qian had an ominous premonition. Setting aside the fact that it was completely different from the previous scenarios, he found it hard to relate this setting to the chrysalis illusion in the warehouse. When things are out of the norm, there must be demons at work. He had to proceed with caution. Don't look around. At that moment, someone behind him chided in a low voice. Fu Qian turned to see an enormous figure. The individual was a burly man nearly 2 meters tall, with rugged features and eyes as large as cowbells. Bulging muscles, a sturdy body, all tightly enclosed in a black uniform, he was a veritable Schwarzenegger plus. He clapped Fu Qian on the shoulder with an arm thicker than Fu Qian's waist, his expression grave. The Wen family has paid a fortune for our services, we must exhibit professionalism. In the past month, they have experienced 2 assassination attempts, including one by a transcendent. We must not take this lightly. Fu Qian looked down at himself, dressed in a uniform identical to the other man's. So, this time he was hired as a bodyguard. The Wen family. The same Wen family mentioned in Wen Li's introduction. Fu Qian blinked. How did the Wen family get tangled up with the transcendent? Isn't this mission too dangerous? How would I know? Part of the big sum the employer paid us is to keep us from asking too many questions. Schwarzenegger glared at him. But I've done some snooping on the side. On the surface, the Wen family appears to be just ordinary tycoons, but in fact, Miss Wen of the Wen family is a genuine transcendent. It is said that she possesses an extremely rare mental type ability, and the Wen family had kept it secret and nurtured her quietly. Only recently, word got out that Wen Li is likely to advance to the 6th phase. If she indeed succeeds, the Wen family will leap into the ranks of the real elite. Unfortunately, not everyone is happy to see this outcome, and the Wen family has offended many. Thus, there have been quite a few individuals causing trouble. So that was the situation. Fu Qian gained a deeper understanding of the mission. Schwarzenegger being in this line of work meant the information was probably reliable. In that case, his mission this time was to ensure Miss Wen of the Wen family successfully advanced. A 6th phase transcendent, how does that level compare to his own, he wondered. Of course, what he found even more puzzling was that, at the end of the day, it was just about a transcendence promotion. How could that possibly be related to the containment item in the warehouse? Chapter 14, Chapter 14, Chapter 14 Our slacking off is justified _1. Chapter 14, Chapter 14 Our slacking off is justified _1. Despite confusion, the task still had to be done. Just as I was about to learn more from Schwarzenegger, the doors of the villa suddenly opened. A man resembling a butler, leading a group of men and women, walked straight towards us. Thank you for your hard work, Captain Gu. Upon seeing Fu Qian and Schwarzenegger, the butler bowed politely. So, Schwarzenegger's last name was Gu. You flatter me, it's all part of the job. It was clear that, despite businesslike courtesy, Captain Gu was quite pleased with the respect shown. The butler continued to exchange pleasantries with a beaming smile. At that moment, a car approached rapidly from a distance, and the butler's smile vanished as he hurriedly went to meet it. I thought as much, it wouldn't be for the mere purpose of extending courtesy to bodyguards. Seeing the neatly lined-up group of butlers, I could surmise that the person arriving in the car must be of no ordinary status. The speeding car barely slowed down as it crossed the plaza, pulling up abruptly in front of the butlers. As the car door opened, several people poured out. The leader was a young man in his 20s, fairly good-looking. His hair was neatly combed, dressed in a white suit and white shoes, slick with hair gel and looking dapper. I've brought reinforcements, where's my sister Wenli? As he faced the welcoming butler, the gentleman wore a jesting smile, gesturing towards the people who alighted with him. There were 3 others accompanying him, 2 men and 1 woman, all quite young except for 1 middle-aged man. Young Master Yi, good to see you, the young miss is resting inside. The butler responded with a smile, his expression showing 100 times more reverence than before. Are they all transcendents? Fu Qian squinted. The presence of these few reminded him of the night watchman he had encountered before, possessing a sense of power far beyond that of ordinary people. It seemed like my role as a mere bodyguard was merely to take the bullets, these were the real guards. But for me, this might actually be a good thing. Perhaps the task would be completed without me having to do anything. It didn't feel that simple. Of course, based on past experience, Fu Qian was pessimistic about this. Hiss. Schwarzenegger Gu also sucked in a breath at this point. 4 transcendents. He spoke rapidly in a lowered voice than before. To find such reinforcements, it seems the rumors are true, the trouble the Wen family is facing is big indeed. No wonder they are spending so much money on hiring people. Don't forget what I said before we arrived, be smart. We're getting paid to work, but if the opponent is a transcendent, the priority is to sound the alarm, not foolishly rush in. They wouldn't place all their bets on us, at most, we're just cannon fodder. Besides these few, there might even be night watchmen around. Aha, got it. Fu Qian nodded. Although Captain Gu's capabilities were average, one could tell he was an experienced hand, with good judgment. His thought process was clear and, quite admirably, he had no intention of letting his subordinates die in vain. However, Fu Qian still wanted to remind him of something, the hearing of transcendence is generally quite good. Indeed, just as he was about to follow the butler inside to find the people, young Master Yi suddenly stopped in his tracks. Slowly turning his head, he looked over with a mocking smile. Well, there goes any hope of slacking off, caught in the act. Fu Qian sighed in sympathy, now the pressure was on Captain Gu. Realizing something was amiss, Captain Gu immediately linked it to what he had just said, his breath catching. To his surprise, though, young Master Yi's gaze swept around and settled on Fu Qian. Is this the bodyguard you hired? Why such a pretty boy? Is this guy nuts? Fu Qian frowned, unexpectedly, the attention had fallen on him. So the pretty boy can't stand someone being prettier than him, huh? After all, even though the kid seems slick and powdered, he's really no match for me. Especially after transforming into a thug, his weak physique is compensated for, and now he's practically a walking hormone bomb. Otherwise, how would he dare to plan a career as a keptman? In this critical period, in order to ensure safety, we must utilize all our resources. This is an elite team member brought by Captain Gu. For some reason, young Master Yi suddenly targeted this bodyguard, but the butler still habitually tried to smooth things over. An elite team member. Young Master Yi let out a cold laugh. How elite can he be? Care to give me a demonstration? Is this guy ever going to give it a rest? As someone purely focused on the mission, Fu Qian had zero interest in the legendary rich second-generation acting. Like a sheep in wolf's clothing. Is that okay, Captain Gu? Even though the butler also found it senseless, he obviously didn't want to go against young Master Yi's wishes and turned to look at Schwarzenegger Gu. He's still on a mission. Captain Gu's face changed color slightly as he glanced at Fu Qian. Having mixed in the underworld for many years, he could naturally tell that this young Master Yi was no ordinary person. Though his own men were strictly trained, at the end of the day, they were mere mortals, and clashing with the transcendent would be unwise. Demonstrating one's strength to reassure the employer is also part of the job description, right? Young Master Yi clearly was not planning to let Fu Qian off the hook easily. From the beginning until now, this puny bodyguard hadn't even deigned to glance at him, and such baseless arrogance really made one's blood boil. "Oh, so how would you like to demonstrate?" Seeing Captain Gu at a loss for words, Fu Qian spoke up directly. "Show us whatever you're good at then." Finally willing to engage, young Master Yi smiled contentedly. "There's too many to count, and it's not convenient to show them all here." This conflict seemed inevitable, and Fu Qian was anything but polite. After becoming a thug, he hadn't had a chance to fight with the transcendent yet, so even beating up a dummy would be fine. If things got too bloody, he could just spend one SAN point and start over, no big deal. As soon as these words were spoken, even the butler's face changed color. Captain Gu went so far as to pull him to the side. "Ha ha." Young Master Yi was stunned for a moment before realizing the implication of Fu Qian's words, and he couldn't help but burst out laughing. "Interesting, I didn't expect you guys could actually hire such an expert. How about this, since you don't know what to showcase, why don't you spar with our little girl?" Young Master Yi pulled over a female companion. "Now you can't say I bullied you, right? A little girl." Fu Qian glanced at the one pushed forward. She was certainly young, but her style left much to be desired. Hair dyed in red and blue stripes, eyeshadow heavy enough to rival a panda's, her revealing dress a definitive clownish woman. Indeed, these days if you don't deck yourself out in strange attire, you're not considered a quirky character. Seeing Fu Qian sizing her up, the woman smiled seductively and tossed a flirtatious glance his way. "Handsome, go easy on me. Don't worry, special talents are my thing." That's good, that's good." The bad girl laughed so hard she trembled and exaggeratedly patted her chest with her hand. The next moment, with a flick and an extension of her hands, her fingers held two shiny blades. Chapter 15, Chapter 15, Chapter 15 Passive Go, slow _1. Chapter 15, Chapter 15 Passive Go, slow _1. This little girl is quite vicious. Fu Qian looked expressionlessly at the woman who had transformed into a wolverine. To deal with an ordinary bodyguard, she even brought out this kind of thing. Captain Gu beside him had already changed color abruptly and stealthily made a hand signal, telling him to concede as quickly as possible when the time came. Fu Qian waved his hand, indicating not to worry. These blades looked intimidating, but they were not long enough. Unless they hit a vital spot, they couldn't cause much damage, at most a skin laceration or flesh wound. Generally speaking, those who liked to play with such flashy things often weren't that strong in ability. At this time, the butler had already very thoughtfully arranged for people to clear the surroundings, cleaning up an open space. He didn't necessarily enjoy this kind of farce, but he wasn't going to stop it now that things had developed to this point. "Don't blink, big brother, I'm about to start." The little wolf girl smiled charmingly and called out in a soft voice. She stuck out her bright red tongue and licked the blade on her fingertip. The next moment, she transformed into a shadow and rushed in front of Fu Qian in an instant, swinging her hand towards his face. "It won't do." Confronted with this malicious strike, Fu Qian just frowned. Am I too strong, or is she too weak? There's absolutely none of that sensation of facing Miss Wen's terrifying blade light. Perhaps in the eyes of others, this woman moved as fast as lightning, unstoppable. But Fu Qian didn't even move his lower body. He simply turned his face and dodged the strike. More than that, he even turned his head back at the fastest speed. If someone's eyesight weren't good, they might think that the little wolf girl had missed. "You've got some skills." The woman swiftly stepped back and sized him up, doubt and surprise in her gaze. Unfortunately, Fu Qian didn't pay her any attention and instead glanced over at young Master Ye's side. The middle-aged men who had gotten out of the car with him seemed obviously stronger than the others to Fu Qian. If that man made a move, it would probably be more meaningful than the little wolf girl's attempts. At this moment, the latter had a serious expression, squinting and staring at him intently. To get him to take action, it might require a bit of provocation. "Come on again." The little wolf girl clenched her teeth. Not sure if it was rage fueled by feeling looked down upon, but this time her speed was even faster than before, with her blade-tipped fingers producing a sharp whistling sound. However, the next moment, the little wolf girl felt a pain in her wrist and was shocked to find her arm had been grabbed by the target with one hand. Even though her target was within an arm's reach, she couldn't continue her attack. Turns out I've become this strong. Fu Qian, holding her wrist, mused internally. Which tier of transcendent are you? 8th phase. Who on earth are you? Not understanding why he was asking this, even the not-so-smart little wolf girl realized she had badly misjudged the situation. How could this guy possibly be just an ordinary bodyguard? 8th phase. Your senior brother is much stronger than you. Fu Qian snorted. She's actually at the 8th phase. It feels like I could handle 10 of her with no problem. The thug form seems to be more powerful than I thought. As for the little wolf girl with the twisted expression, Fu Qian certainly had no sense of pity. She hadn't been polite at all in her approach. She pulled out her claws to deal with an ordinary person, aiming each move at his face. It was clear that she was keenly trying to anticipate young Master Ye's desires, perhaps aiming to disfigure him. How malicious of you, you just destroyed a child's dreams. Fu Qian took a breath and tightened his grip. The little wolf girl screamed in agony as the blades fell from her hands to the ground. Before her scream ended, a wild force hit her side, sending her flying like a cannonball. Amidst a loud crash, the little wolf girl slammed into the car they had arrived in, struggling 3 times without managing to get up. Not bad, right? After kicking his opponent away, Fu Qian turned back. Young Master Ye's face was a marvelous sight at this moment, his eyes glued to Fu Qian's leg that had just kicked someone. Clearly, even he couldn't have managed such a dashing kick. Not just him, Captain Gu's eyeballs were about to fall to the ground. Be careful. The middle-aged man beside young Master Yi moved forward with a guarded face, shielding him behind his body. Good. Seeing the middle-aged man about to make a move, Fu Qian was not alarmed but rather elated. The woman just now was really not enough of a challenge. What's that old saying? If you're seeking thrills, then go all the way. Since they had started to fight, with these people's approach, making peace was out of the question, so he might as well knock them all down as fast as possible. Wenli has died, containment failed. Evaluation, negative, dereliction of duty. Punishment, SAN points. Decrease by 5, current SAN points are 37. Just as a big fight was about to erupt, a prompt suddenly rang in his ears. Are you freaking kidding me? I knew this mission wouldn't be so simple, but to die just like this. Fu Qian, teleported back to the warehouse, was quite shocked. Without any noise, and certainly as a transcendent of no low level, within the heavily guarded Wen family mansion, she just died without a sound. It seemed his premonition was not wrong, this mission was far more difficult than he had imagined. And to think it considered him negligent, reducing his SAN points by 5 directly. That was equivalent to 5 lives, utterly infuriating. Fu Qian was incredibly saddened in that moment, the joy of leveling up completely washed away. He decided to put all the blame on young Master Yi and his band of hooligans. Event replay. Instead of joining the fray again immediately, Fu Qian decisively chose to replay the process that had just occurred. 5 minutes and 12 seconds, Wenli died, mission failed. Consumed 1 SAN point, attempting containment again. After confirming the time of Wenli's death, Fu Qian touched the mist gate. The Wen family mansion appeared once more. This time, without waiting for Captain Gu to give any admonishment, Fu Qian took the initiative to approach him with his question. I heard Miss Wen is a genius transcendent, currently at least at the 7th phase, does she really need our protection? Boy, you're quite informed. Captain Gu looked at Fu Qian with surprise. I just heard it through the grapevine. It's said that her abilities are of the psychic type, and before ascending to the middle tier, her physical constitution is very fragile, barely better than an ordinary person. This is also why so many assassins have recently appeared, all wanting to snuff her out in the cradle, because once she upgrades, she'll be much more difficult to deal with. This was indeed an explanation. Captain Gu's gossiping abilities were not bad. Fu Qian looked up to see the butler walking out of the villa, and soon young Master Ye's car would arrive. The next step was to figure out how Miss Wen had died. According to the way things had unfolded just then, Miss Wen would die in 5 minutes and 12 seconds. He had at most 5 minutes now. But how to confirm it? After the previous physical exchange, Fu Qian had a full understanding of his own combat capabilities. Around the square were a dozen tall white pillars, all carved out of solid stone. Seeing young Master Ye's car approaching, Fu Qian quietly neared one of the pillars and fiercely kicked the base of it. Half a minute later, accompanied by a muffled sound, the pillar crashed to the ground with a loud thud. Screams erupted, and the piercing alarm rang out instantly. Young Master Ye's car hadn't even come to a complete stop when 4 people burst out of it like lightning. The welcoming team behind the butler instantly descended into chaos. Seizing the chaos, Fu Qian blended into the stream of people and sneaked into the villa. Chapter 16, Chapter 16, Chapter 16 Unpreventable_1. Chapter 16, Chapter 16 Unpreventable_1. 3 minutes left. Compared to the outside, the interior decoration of the villa was even more sumptuous. Inside, there was also a large group of bodyguards in matching suits, who had already received the signal and were now quickly surging outwards. Fu Qian's appearance here undoubtedly left the group bewildered. Without a word, Fu Qian moved swiftly through the crowd, triggering countless alarms along the way. Ignoring calls from others, when someone tried to stop him, he deftly dodged them. The villa instantly descended into chaos. The piercing sound of the alarms grew more intense. Fu Qian clearly noticed a large number of bodyguards gathering at the door of a certain room. 1 minute left. It must be here. The bodyguards were so nervous about this area, the likelihood that Miss Wen was here was high. Fu Qian strode forward, casually picking up a stone table and hurling it out. Amidst the whistling sound, the table turned into a frisbee, its terrifying momentum forcing the bodyguards to retreat, creating a path forcefully cleared in front. Fu Qian followed closely, without hesitation, kicking the door open. There were 2 women in the room. One of them in her early 20s, with a pretty face and painted brows, had the demeanor of a lady from a reputable family. At that moment, she was sitting at a table, holding a bowl of soup, probably about to drink it. It was very likely Wen Li. Fu Qian did not hesitate to fire an air bullet. Although it was still uncertain how she was going to die, one thing was certain: the action she was doing would lead to her death. So stop right there. After many days of practice, Fu Qian's accuracy had greatly improved. The air bullet blew the bowl in the woman's hand to fragments, and amid shrieks, the steaming soup instantly drenched her, soaking her through. At this moment, footsteps sounded from behind, and a group of people rushed in, surrounding Fu Qian. "Who are you? Who sent you?" The one leading the charge, a middle-aged man, bore a slight resemblance to the soup-drinking woman. His face was ashen, and his eyes bore into Fu Qian as if he wanted to devour him. 51 seconds, 52 seconds, 53 seconds. Fu Qian ignored him, silently counting. Until 52 seconds past 5 minutes, the failure prompt for the mission did not appear. The soup-drinking woman was standing there just fine, protected by a circle of bodyguards. Good. Fu Qian was very satisfied with this outcome and turned to glance at the middle-aged man. "And you are? You don't know me." The middle-aged man laughed furiously, staring intently at Fu Qian. "I am Wen Xiuxian. I'll ask you one last time, who are you? Who sent you?" "Wen Xiuxian. I don't know him." Now that the other party had introduced himself, Fu Qian nodded and pointed to Captain Gu behind the crowd. "Fu Qian, an elite team member of Captain Gu's team. He is the one who sent me." "Damn it." Schwarzenegger Gu, who was already doubting his life, nearly fell to the ground when he heard Fu Qian's words. And then Fu Qian changed the subject and pointed at the soup-drinking woman. "I just saved your daughter's life." "Huh." Wen Xiuxian was originally furious and about to order the 2 men to be captured, but he paused, somewhat stunned by Fu Qian's words. "What do you mean?" "Hard to understand. If you're confused, you can ask the esteemed lady behind your precious daughter." Fu Qian pointed at the young woman dressed as a maid behind Wen Li. He was now 80% sure that there was something wrong with this woman. "Me." The young maid, noticing everyone's gaze turned toward her, was momentarily flustered. "I don't understand what's happening. I haven't done anything." Seeing the other party desperately denying it, Fu Qian just watched without speaking. Wen Xiuxian seemed to sense that something was amiss as well, looking thoughtfully at the broken bowl on the ground. Then, with a signal from his eyes, two people quickly restrained the maid, while someone else collected the remnants of the soup from the broken bowl. The results came back quickly. It's really poisoned. Wen Xiuxian looked at the young maid, his eyes filled with murderous intent. Fang Ting, my Wen family has treated you well, why did you do this? I really didn't know. The maid named Fang Ting had a stunned look in her eyes as she fervently shook her head in denial. You cooked the soup for Wenli, and you say you didn't know. Tell me, who sent you? I truly didn't. Watching the drama unfold before him, Fu Qian paid attention to Wenli, the protagonist of the incident. The recently escaped genius's complexion was a bit pale, but she remained surprisingly calm, seemingly numb to such occurrences. On the other side, Fang Ting kept repeating, I don't know, and Wen Xiuxian appeared to have reached the limits of his patience. After asking a couple more times, he ordered his men to drag Fang Ting away, presumably to be harshly interrogated. Just then, Fang Ting's pleas for innocence abruptly stopped, and she stood still on the spot. After a few seconds of silence, she let out a shrill scream from her mouth, the sound unspeakably crazed. The next moment, as if she were possessed by divine strength, she forcefully broke free from two bodyguards, hugged the still-dazed Wenli, and bared her ghastly white teeth to bite down. Crack! The sound of ripping like a craft paper bag emanated, and the frenzied Fang Ting was punched and sent flying before she could bite anyone. In face of Fang Ting's sudden attack, Fu Qian did not step in to rescue but chose to observe quietly. In his view, such a surprise attack, although unexpected, would not pose any real threat. It was an opportunity to see if there was any exploitable strength. If the Wen family couldn't handle even this, they should give up the idea of being a power player. Considering the way her body twisted upon hitting the ground, it seemed certain she wouldn't survive. Fu Qian looked up and saw that the person who saved Wenli was none other than the middle-aged men accompanying young Master Yi. It appeared that this group had already searched around outside and returned. She must have been hypnotized, it seems the other side has an expert in this field, the middle-aged man said, inspecting Fang Ting's body and nodding to Wen Xiuxian. Thank you, Master Ji, Wen Xiuxian, still recovering from the shock, thanked the middle-aged man. Uncle Wen, you're too polite, it was just a helping hand. Young Master Yi finally found an opportunity to make his presence felt and stepped out with a laugh. With us here, nothing will happen to Wenli. Before he could finish speaking, one side of the room's wall suddenly shattered. A huge white pillar, with a thunderous wind sound tearing through the air, instantly engulfed Wenli's figure. Wenli deceased, containment failed. In the midst of chaos, Fu Qian looked through the gap in the wall and saw a gigantic, oddly shaped figure. The monster was at least 3 meters tall, covered from head to toe with what appeared to be a layer of stone, with its head a simple sphere with several holes. At that moment, it stood before a broken pillar, precisely the one Fu Qian had earlier kicked and broken. The severed pillar had been hurled like a javelin, crossing tens of meters in the blink of an eye to execute a precise kill. The previous sudden madness and attack by the maid were not expected to succeed, they served solely to locate for this creature. Amid Wen Xiuxian's earth-shattering roar, the bodyguards finally reacted and started attacking, but all were thwarted by the monster's thick stone shell. After breaking through the resistance, the monster plunged into the lake next to the villa and disappeared in an instant. Chapter 17, Chapter 17, Chapter 17 Eat My Gun _1. Chapter 17, Chapter 17 Eat My Gun _1. Professional. Fu Qian, back at the warehouse, was still savoring the assassination he had just carried out. The plan was clearly devised by professionals, each step interlocking seamlessly with the next. First was the hypnotizing of the maid beside the target, attempting to stealthily poison and dispose of the target. If that failed, there were transcendent beings lying in ambush outside, ready to use the maid to pinpoint the location and deliver a fatal strike. It's truly not easy for Miss Wen to remain alive. SAN points decrease by 1, entering containment scenario. As Fu Qian marveled, he once again made contact with the mist gate. This time he repeated his trick, breaking a stone pillar with a kick and blending into the crowd to infiltrate the villa. Bursting through the door once more, Wenli was indeed still drinking soup. Stop right there. Fu Qian bellowed angrily, once again blowing up the bowl in Wenli's hands with an air bullet, drenching Miss Wen from head to toe. As for the maid named Fong Ting, Fu Qian still chose not to eliminate her directly but let her be controlled again by Wen Xiuxian's men. What if she died on the spot, and the person outside sneakily slipped away? He was still waiting for the attack from outside. To make the stone giant attack at the same time from the same direction, he even chose the same pillar to kick. Now, everything was proceeding according to the script. Fu Qian silently counted the time. Why? Who sent you? I don't know. I really didn't. When Xiuxian and the maid once again reached the death dialogue stage, and with a scream, as the maid lunged at Wenli, Fu Qian sprang into action. He rushed forward ahead of the middle-aged man surnamed Ji, kicking Wenli into a corner of the wall. How dare you? Wenli's father was enraged, roaring as he rushed to the side of the fallen Wenli. The middle-aged man surnamed Ji arrived at this moment, swinging a silent punch at Fu Qian. This was more like it, far better than any offbeat little wolf girl. Even though it looked unremarkable, the force behind the middle-aged man's punch was much stronger than that from the person with blade shards in their hand. Fu Qian didn't dodge or flinch, unhesitantly meeting the punch with one of his own. A surge of fierce power came through, shaking Fu Qian to the core, making his arm tingle with pain. Interesting, this was the first character that had managed to make him bleed. Of course, the middle-aged man surnamed Ji fared much worse. Propelled backward by the powerful punch, he staggered 3 steps, his face flushed red, obviously injured. Unable to hide his shocked expression, the middle-aged man was about to say something when suddenly a massive roar filled the air, and a white stone pillar soared through the wall, landing right where Wenli had been standing. Debris scattered everywhere, dust rising in clouds. Wen Xiuxian, who had been holding Wenli and roaring, was suddenly quiet, staring blankly at the stone pillar embedded in the floor. If he had been just a moment slower, Wenli would have been reduced to dust and bones. This is... Fu Qian paid no attention to the bewildered father, instead grabbing the stone pillar. The quality was really not bad, not even a crack after such an impact. Praising it, he took a deep breath. In the next instant, Fu Qian exerted his full strength, ripping the stone pillar out from the wall. Amidst the terrified gazes of those around, Fu Qian struck a cool pose, flinging the stone pillar back the way it had come. The pillar once again transformed into a javelin, instantly traversing dozens of meters through the air. Outside the villa, the stone giant was performing its insensitivity act when a violent wind sound came through, and to its horror, it saw the stone pillar it had thrown returning. The rock-covered body was highly defensive but lacked agility. Even as it tried its best to dodge, one of its right legs was hit solidly and smashed into 2 pieces. Among the flying debris, a symbol of blood finally splattered out, red. The stone giant collapsed with a thunderous crash, hitting the ground hard. At the same time, following the thrown stone pillar, Fu Qian also jumped through the large hole in the wall to the outside. It seemed to sense the danger. Although one leg was broken, the stone giant had not lost all its fighting strength. With a muffled roar, it grabbed a car and threw it hard at another stone pillar. The pillar instantly broke into several pieces, and the luxury car was completely wrecked. It looks familiar. Upon closer look, that seems to be young Master Ye's car. That car does have a troubled fate, wasn't it trashed last time by little wolf girl? Crackling. Pieces of rocks on the ground came to life, rapidly gathering at the stone giant's legs. A strangely shaped new leg quickly formed, and the stone giant barely recovered its ability to move, struggling to stand up and run towards the lake. Think you can escape? Fu Qian, who had followed, kicked another stone pillar nearby and aimed as he threw it. Boom. The ensuing scene was nothing short of brutal. The stone giant was hit squarely in the back by the flying javelin, and under the immense impact, it was instantly smashed to the ground, completely losing its ability to move. The sound of rocks breaking echoed, and stone slabs peeled off the stone giant, revealing a naked man in only his underwear. The naked man lay on the ground, evidently unconscious. The closest bodyguards immediately surrounded him. Fu Qian didn't join the commotion, and even put down another stone pillar he was holding. His instincts told him it wouldn't be that simple. The next moment, a sudden boom erupted from the ground, and the group of bodyguards surrounding the naked man fell one after another, clutching their heads. The only person still standing helped the unconscious naked man to his feet and dove into the water. As expected, there was an accomplice, already mixed in among the bodyguards. Who exactly are you, and what is going on? Wen Xiuxian and his party finally caught up at this moment. Being quite a figure himself, by this time he had lost his initial shock and said to Fu Qian with a stern voice. Fu Qian glanced at the middle-aged man surnamed Ji behind him, who was shielding Wen Li, young Master Yi, and the others behind him. He was smart enough to know that now was the time to stick together to avoid any distraction strategies. Aside from being pale, Miss Wen seemed to be all right. That kick just now might have looked vicious, but considering Miss Wen's physical condition, Fu Qian had carefully controlled the force of his kick. Accidentally killing her with a kick would certainly not happen, at worst it would break a leg. Is this the attitude you have towards the men who saved your daughter's life? In response to Wen Xiuxian's question, Fu Qian snorted and stood with his hands behind his back. It was an indisputable fact, and Wen Xiuxian's expression went through several changes before he finally let out a sigh and formally expressed his thanks. No need for courtesy. I am merely fulfilling someone's request. There is someone who doesn't wish for her to die, said Fu Qian with a long laugh, adopting the air of a high-minded person. Fulfilling someone's request. Wen Xiuxian's eyebrows moved, and his eyes filled with doubt and surprise. May I ask who that is? There. Fu Qian pointed at Captain Gu. It was him. I am an elite member of Captain Gu's team. Uncle Wen, this man's background is unknown, we can't just trust him blindly. Not only was Wen Xiuxian utterly dumbfounded, but young Master Yi also couldn't hold back anymore, coming forward to urgently assert his presence. The attacker was down on the ground just now, but he let him go. They could be in cahoots and putting on an act. Heaven cherishes life, I simply did not wish to commit unnecessary killings, Fu Qian coldly said, spinning a tale. In reality, he hadn't been so eager to give chase just now. With an assassin around, someone like him, a high-minded individual, held value. If he had really killed the men, Wen Xiuxian, the old fox, would probably have many suspicions instantly. And why be so ruthless if he didn't intend to kill? That fellow was responsible for wasting one of his SAN points, truly unforgivable. I believe him, a weak voice suddenly interjected, as the talented girl Wen Li spoke for the first time. Part 1 of the series ends here. Thank you for watching and listening. If you find it interesting, please give us a like, a comment and a subscription so that we have the motivation to make the next videos.